I lied. I'm actually not quite ready yet. I opened my monster, but I did not light my cigar. So
Uh,
here we are, episode 9 of ArachNerds, part of the Herpeticulture Network, brought to you by FullVSapparel.com. Check it out. Need shirts, hats, hoodies, mugs, um, all kinds of stuff. Official ArachNerd shirts. You can get them.
herp,
FullVSapparel.com.
herping season is coming up,
It is.
so
Do it
rocking.
comfortably.
Yeah,
And use the code THN at checkout. Get 15% off your order. That is the exclusive promo code for THN listeners and viewers like you. Go use it. We're back. It's a busy night tonight, so it is the 13th. So right now we are recording ArachNerds. The Cornstarch boys are recording right now, and then Flippiton is going live. I think they just did as of like a minute ago. So gonna have a whole bunch of stuff dropping here tonight, Thursday night into tomorrow. So if you're listening to this after the fact, which whether you listen to them first or this or whatever, go check out everything else that you haven't listened to yet. So, but we're back. What is new in Surge World?
yeah. So currently, as a lot of people know, I'm in Pennsylvania right now. I moved from Illinois a few years back, but I just landed a better position in Illinois, so I'm heading back over there. Which means I will be getting. I mean, the cost of living over there is a bit cheaper, so I'm going to be getting a nicer apartment, more bedrooms, so I could finally get back into tarantulas and inverts again because I was scared of cross contamination when it comes to my anti and anti-mite quarantine procedures with them. So I didn't want to gamble it because even though those chances are small, it would still feel shitty to like buy a bunch of tarantulas and have them be affected by like preventamite or something like that.
Yeah.
So now I'm kind of planning it all out. I'm like browsing a bunch of websites, including our guest's website. Stocking up on this Pamphobedius in the cart and stuff. But yeah, no, it's pretty interesting. I like, yeah, it's going to be a fun time. But other than that,
I
just got
do. I do feel bad for you, man, because it's like being in the ArachNerds chat and stuff, and like we're all posting all the stuff we're getting, and
yeah, and then I'm just in the
not you just
corner,
got to sit there and suffer.
and then Hans is talking about all the cool stuff he could get
Yeah.
in like he get in Germany over there, and then he's over here jealous of our like what our I'm blanking on the genus name of our native scorpions and everything that nobody keeps over here.
Yeah. I think it's like Diplocentra stuff. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm hoping we can schedule an episode with him here soon because I've really enjoyed talking to him and hearing his perspective on what the hobby's like on the other side of the globe in Germany and stuff, and EU and whatnot. And
Yeah.
it's I think that would make for a good episode in itself. So we're in the process of making something happen there. So,
Yeah, definitely.
but other than the move, you got some boas. Boas came in.
Yeah, finally, as you know, it's starting to get warmer. Even though the lows are still like in the 30s, it's reaching 70s during the day. So, getting all of the snake purchases that I made over the winter, which is overwhelming a little bit because you're shopping in the winter. You're like, oh, this will show up when it shows up, and they all show
Right.
up at the same time.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's even
I
worse
don't.
because I didn't expect because this whole job thing moved pretty fast. It was a span of two
Yeah.
weeks, so I didn't realize, and they want me to move there in 2 weeks. So it's just like going back and forth. So
Mm-hmm.
it'll be fun. It's a good
It's
time.
probably a good thing though that everything shows up at once because then you can quarantine everything at the same time. You're not having to kind of like stagger things according to
Yeah,
when they came in. And
yeah. That's that. Yeah, that's the only saving grace. Like for me, otherwise, like I'm just going with the flow of things. I'm
Mhm.
sure when I move I'm thinking about going through another quarantine process when I move everything over, just in general, because they'll all be in the car. So, but I don't know.
How far of a drive is that?
Um, 11 hours, 9 to 11 hours, depending. Yeah, around there. So, be a fun time. Not really, but be catching up on a bunch of podcasts. Hopefully, it's one of the heavy weeks again for our network, so I have plenty to listen to. But
yeah, it's cigars make drives like that a lot more enjoyable.
yeah, I'm still traumatized
So.
from inhaling a cigar. I will not do that again. But what's new with you? I saw that you got some tarantulas in.
I did. So was it yesterday? Yesterday, I finally got my hands on some Aratum.
Nice.
Our buddy Dylan Tinney at 8 Deadly Sins had some. I snagged 2 of them. They arrived yesterday. It's that weird time of year where it's like cold at night and cold in the mornings, but come like late morning, early afternoon, it's pretty damn hot here, like 80s now, but it'll be in the 40s at night. So it's that kind of that odd, awkward place where like you want to use a heat pack because most of your stuff's going to be traveling overnight anyways. But then you hope that it gets delivered earlier because you want it to get to where it's going before it gets really hot. And so I got them, and it was pretty toasty in the box, but both came fine. I think I set them up, and I think one's already munching on a pinhead.
Nice.
So other than that, my classy malted is pretty pumped because it's just looking better and better. Seems to also be herring less and less, which is nice.
How big is it now?
If I had to, like 2 inches, maybe a little bigger than that. I don't know. Big. It's so hard to gauge because, like, when and I mean, Tom can answer this, but like when we're talking about size, are we talking about literally like if it was in a perfect circle, the diameter of that circle? Or are we talking like tip from top leg to bottom leg?
Yeah, it's diagonal leg span.
Yeah, usually it's on the diagonal leg span.
Then I would think probably.
Except you're in Europe, then that's body length.
2.5 inches.
Oh yeah, you guys do it different over there. I didn't realize you were over there.
Oh no, I'm not. No.
Oh okay. No,
yeah, I'm over here. It was just that we have a friend Hans in our ArachNerds group chat, and we keep on forgetting that whenever he says a size, going back and forth. But just wish it was synonymized at some point. But then again, I suck at guessing at sizing for everything. So
yeah.
I do like the coin method. Like it could fit on a silver dollar. It could fit on a quarter. It could fit on a dime.
Yeah, that'd be fun trying to get a Zenesis just stand on a quarter still.
But yeah, they came in. They're doing good. Classy's doing good. Got some other stuff in pre-molt. But
nice.
I lost my female maculatus, which sucks. Not terribly surprised. I mean, they came in as adults. They're wild caught from Hawaii. So who knows how old they were before I got them. You know, we got the brood out of her. The babies that I have, they're doing well. Our buddy Dustin Black sent me some of the, was it confused flower beetles? Teeny tiny ones. And those have been perfect. The larvae for those have been really good. Good size for that. Really good size for those Aratum. So hoping those kind of take off as much as my mealworms and stuff have. And other than that, it's pretty much business as usual. We're getting into rhino rat season is happening here soon. So
nice.
And start pairing some of those up at some point.
Go through all that pain to try to get them on rodents all over
again. Yeah, I mean, it's really not that painful. I just got to wait them out. I did lose a baby the other day. It was one of the ones that still hadn't transitioned yet. Not surprised that it rolled because it was really struggling to get with the program for the last couple months and finally just kicked the bucket. So considering that's like my first loss outside of ones that just, died within 24 hours of coming out of the egg for whatever reason, like not bad. So
yeah, definitely.
It happens. It's to be expected to some degree, but yeah, other than that, nothing new. No news is good news. So, but we're here. We are joined this week by Mr. Tom Patterson of Hardcore Arachnids, who is like one of the people, again, like very high on my list when we started doing the podcast of like some of the like the higher echelon folks that we got to get on. He was right up there, if not at the top. So
I was an easy get.
I was talking to Kat about. I'm like, what are the chances Tom says yes to this? And like, she was like, either he's gonna laugh and say no, or he's just not gonna reply.
Well, here
So
I am.
yeah, pretty stoked about this.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember back on the Arachno boards days when I first
Yeah.
started. Same icon, same avatar. I was
Yeah.
on Facebook. So
Oh, I hope I wasn't a dick to you back then.
nah. It just no. I'm just reminiscing about that. But
Yeah.
what's it? Speaking of, I mean, before we sort of get into things, but like, what's it been like seeing the hobby sort of shift from message boards to Facebook groups?
It's grown. It's gotten bigger, but back when Arachnoboards was around, that was like the main one source internet forum, and everyone was there. Facebook is so divided now. Everyone's got their own little clique and Facebook group. All these little pockets of groups that come and go. So I think the hobby's bigger than ever, and there's more groups than ever. But we used to be all corralled into one place on Arachnoboards.
Yeah.
Whether that was for better or worse, I don't know. But
I liked having the forums around because it, having that requirement of creating an account and logging in and like not being immediately accessible by your profile already, like it is on Facebook with the groups and stuff.
Right,
like I feel like there was a barrier there that kind of did a job of sort of weeding the people out that were at least semi-serious.
Yeah.
And then as soon as the forums and stuff kind of died, it opened those floodgates.
I love the Arachnoboards. I was so active on it for years. I still check it out every now and then. Not as much as I used to, admittedly. I don't think anybody does, but I loved it.
Yeah.
There was another one. Was it Venom List?
There was a couple. There was also Tarantula Talk or something. There was a couple other forums that they all kind of went. And right now, Arachnoboards, and there's another one just called the Tarantula Forum that are still up and active. Whether anybody's using them, I don't really know.
I still think Arachnoboards, though, like the forum is like a wealth of information still. To go back on, especially like, or just seeing like photos of species that were once like widely available or just around.
It's got such a timestamp of history of what was happening in the hobby that it should be there forever.
Yeah. Also, I love looking back at like Poke 54's posts, just calling people, just calling like new people out, just being an asshole.
Yeah, I met a lot of cool people on Arachnoboards too. People who I'm still friends with today. Scott and Debbie, the owners. They live here on Long Island. I'm friends with them.
Oh, they do? I thought they were in Arizona for some reason.
Yeah, no, they're in Long Island here. So.
All right, so let's jump right into it. So, so how did the whole invert hobby start for you? Like, what got you into it? What were your first animals?
Who is Tom Patterson?
Yeah.
So, like any of us, I was into exotic animals since I was a kid. My parents would take me shopping at the mall, and I would tell them, "I'm going to the pet store. Pick me up there when you're done shopping." And I would just hang out at these pet stores, like gazing into these tanks in amazement of all these cool animals, And my parents were cool. They let me have some reptiles and stuff growing up, but I always wanted a giant spider, and that's kind of where they drew the line. So, make a long story short, when I got old enough, got my first job in a pet store, got my first paycheck, bought my first spider, and it just kind of snowballed from there. So,
do you remember what species it was?
Yeah, it was a regular old rose hair, like most people started with. That started collecting when I started collecting. It was actually just before I started working there. The guy put on these big, thick rubber gloves, and he had this rose hair in a tank with like corncob bedding. I don't know if you guys even remember that. They used to sell like this corncob bedding. It was like, but it's a rose hair. You could have kept it on marbles and
Was that before or after the vermiculite bedding? Like where people started using?
It was probably around the same time, to be honest. Yeah, they used to sell this corncob bedding. They don't sell it anymore, but rose hair was fine on it. And I was amazed by the spider, though. I brought it home, and I love this thing. And I didn't know that they shed their skin. I didn't know anything about tarantulas back then, So the first time I saw it on its back, it was Easter Sunday. And we were leaving to go to my grandmother's house for Easter dinner. And I'm like, "Ma, the spider's dead." Like, she should be, maybe she's happy that died. Came home later that night, and there's the shed and the spider, and I didn't know what happened. I was like amazed, so.
She has risen.
It's a miracle.
Right. So, there was no internet back then. didn't know spiders shed their skin like that. So I was amazed, and I was immediately hooked ever since then. And like
So
that's
like, so did you kind of like start off with just keeping tarantulas for a while, or did you have like some true spiders, some scorpions, centipedes?
no, mostly tarantulas for a long time.
Okay.
You were very limited on what you can get back then. It was like whatever the pet shop can get in. There was no internet. You couldn't just go. There's no price sheets of 150 species back then.
Mhm.
The pet store had availability of 10 different species. Everything was wild caught, and they didn't really stock a lot of them. But the store where I would go, they would get one every week because they would come in and buy whatever they had. So that's how my collection started because this store knew just get a different spider in this week. That kid Tom will be here. And
So, so, so just to kind of like blow people's minds out there, how much did that? Do you remember like back then or around that time, how much like adult rose hairs were going for? Or
it was probably about $15. They were dirt cheap.
yeah, now you can't even find a sling at that price.
Yeah, no, spiderlings now are going for like 60, $70, which
Yeah,
blows my mind too. Like the thought that people will pay that for a rose hair. You couldn't give away slings.
Mhm.
yeah,
You wouldn't breed them because no one wanted them,
Right.
and that's why they're not around now and worth a lot of money. And they're great spiders, so I'm happy that you know people still want them. So
yeah, definitely.
Hmm. What was what did you end up sort of as you were getting more and more stuff? Like, what did
yeah,
you end up gravitating towards and sort of finding to be like the particular, niche or genus that you really were
yeah.
attracted
So
to?
I had this old book that had a picture of Poecilotheria regalis in it. And I really want a Poecilotheria, but again, you couldn't really find them. I don't know. This book might have been a European book or something. So I would like go around to all the pet stores and show them this picture and ask them if they can get them, and nobody could. It wasn't until later on into the hobby where you could start finding
Hmm.
cool species like that. A few more years into the hobby, and to this day, I'm into Poecilotheria, and I like big giant Theraphosa species and things like that. So that's kind of where I mean, I've had everything. I would get anything I get. I love like real little oddball Theraphosinae species, whatever, that had no info. I like, weird stuff like that. But the two genre that I've always like focused to were Poecilotheria and probably Theraphosa, just because it's a big, giant, ugly brown spider with four of them, So, I love them.
Yeah, I remember seeing you post like back like over damn now it's over a decade
Yeah,
like on arachno boards like all these like new species or you'll post up like your price list or whatever what you have
yeah,
available, and it was always like with me because for a long time I was more tarantula focused,
yeah,
that anything with true spiders it would be
mhm,
like what the hell is that,
yeah,
what, and I think that's the first time like me Google copying and pasting one of the scientific names you had. I think it was on like one import you had like net casting spiders. I forgot the
Hmm.
genus, and
oh,
Jessica's gonna kill me
nice.
for that.
Yeah.
Uh, but yes, and I just thought that was like those were like really cool. So like, when did true spiders get come into the picture for you, and how do you like them compared to tarantulas now?
So I started getting into my Gallimorphs first. It was like Little Felly and things like that. Not a lot of people were keeping them, and again, it was hard to get them and get info on them. But I bred Megathaloides or whatever they call them now, and I also had some Sicarius. Back then, you could also get Sicarius very easily, and I was breeding them for true spiders, so I was into them. And it just kind of took off from there. But it started with my Gallimorphs, and then kind of started pushing myself into other true spiders and stuff. And my good friend Frank Soma, who's a big into true spiders, he taught me a lot about them. So and he had access to a lot of stuff like that. So um, with true spiders, it was just a whole new chapter to this. There's such a big group of spiders and such diversity with true
Hmm.
spiders that you can never stop learning about them. There's always a cool new true spider to learn about. So with tarantulas, I felt like I got to a point where I'm never going to say I know everything, but I knew a lot about them. They become kind of repetitive. There's terrestrial, arboreal,
Right.
or fossorial, where with true spiders, there's just so many different habits and traits and things that they do that you'll never stop. And there's so many of them that it was just fun to start learning about, having like it was refreshing to have a new group of things to learn about with the true spiders. So I started getting really into the true spiders probably about 10 years ago. So yeah. And I love them now. So first thing I do now when I look at someone's list is I go to the true spider section. I won't skip right past the tarantulas. Yeah.
Right to the jumping spiders, huh?
Yeah. Oh, jumping spiders. That's a beast of its own.
Is there a specific genus that you kind of grab, or like family you gravitate towards when it comes to true spiders? Are you more of like a Sparacidae kind of person?
I was just gonna say probably Sparacidae. The fast-moving huntsman spiders and wandering type spiders. They grow fast. They live fast. They move fast. They breed fast. Everything's fast, and they're just fun to keep, man. And there's so many cool, colorful ones, and they keep you on your toes. They're so fast, and they're just very interesting.
Yeah, oh, sorry, go on.
So I've been tempted lately by the David Bowie eye.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never outside of Latrodectus, I've never really had a whole lot of interest in any of the true stuff. But
yeah,
seeing stuff like those and some of the wandering spiders that Dylan's been putting up for sale and some other odds and ends, it's definitely piqued my interest. It's I think trapdoors are going to be at the top of the list as far as outside of tarantulas stuff goes. And that one you posted, I think today or yesterday, that the arboreal one, that's
the Sansone or whatever where they are. Yeah, they're small. They're only about that big.
Mm-hmm.
But trapdoors can get a little boring because they hide a lot. I know I said it's very interesting to keep in my post, but they tend to get boring because they hide a lot. But they're cool. They have a lot of attitude too. Most trapdoors.
Yeah, I'm really hoping I can get my hands on. We have, I think, 1 or 2 native species here in South Carolina, and I'd really like to get my hands on some if I can. Our buddy Gabe, who's another host on one of the other shows, he has they do like pit traps when they're out there studying stuff, and so he's like, dude, I find them in those things all the time. He's like, next time I get some, I'll set them aside and
oh wow, that's interesting.
give them a shot. So
yeah, I definitely feel like the native species in the United States are definitely kind of underrated for the most part, and that drives home more, like that hits home more and more whenever friends from like Europe are saying like, "Oh, you guys have these are so dope." Like Hans, he keeps on asking about them, and it just kind of makes me look into them more and more because like you can find them in your backyard. They're not that cool, but then when other people start like showing up, like, oh no, their life habits like this, similar to what you said, Tom, that with spiders, with true spiders, there's such a wide variety of lifestyles, so there's something out there for everyone. For that, like I was a huge fan of Loxalis. I don't know what the current state is with keeping them, but I know when I was on Arachnids boards, I was talking to a couple users. This was like 15 or so years ago. I was keeping groups of them communally. No substrate, just kind of like crumpled up newspaper and everything, and just watching them hunt and everything inside there. That was wild to me. I kept Latrodactys. I thought they were slightly boring. Anything that sits on a web.
I felt the same way.
Yeah, I'm not just super fond of them, and now that I'm older and bald, I even don't like web building spiders, especially after I've walked through countless of them. I'm just not a huge fan of that. But like Latrodactys is one that Loxalis is one that I'll always like be in my heart. Like I do want to start picking up more species. I don't know, they don't seem to be as common as they were before or maybe I'm just not looking hard enough where there was like multiple different species I was able to find on people's lists. Now it's just like, oh, some people have like reclusa or just like a mix of, or just like one of this, one of that. But I definitely want to go looking for them more.
Yeah, I've seen 3 or 4 species of them on different price lists over the years. But for me, with widows, I felt like that keeping them was like keeping like a house spider. Like they just kind of web up and sit there, and I always found them a little boring. I'll probably get a bunch of angry emails from widows tomorrow. But that's just how I felt. I like wandering spiders.
Speaking of wandering spiders, have you ever kept Phenutria?
Yeah, I've had a few species of them before. I've seen them in Central America and photographed them down there too, but I've kept them in captivity.
Nice. I actually saw them down when I was in South America. Haven't kept them just because whenever I was able to, I was still like a kid or I was like like renting an apartment with a friend, so I never
Yeah.
wanted to be like tarantulas are one thing.
Uh-huh.
Having a fast moving, potentially a little bit more toxic
Yeah.
true spider, maybe not. With tarantulas, it's easy. They move
Yeah.
they move backwards and forwards.
Yeah. Right.
That's I can't deal with teleportation that quick that well.
Right.
But they are cool if their displays are really pretty
Yeah.
nice. Kind of
I've got some,
terrifying. Nice.
I have some Funitria Ferra right now that I'm raising up.
Oh,
So,
nice. Are they captive bred, or did you?
they came in as small babies, so they're either captive bred or they hatched from a wild caught sack. I'm not sure.
Nice.
Yeah.
So at what point did you decide to start Hardcore Arachnids? And are you doing that full time?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
It was kind of an accident. I never wanted to be a dealer. Like I just was happy breeding stuff and having my little hobby. The thought of turning it into a business and becoming a job, I didn't want to like ruin my passion for this. Like. But I kind of got forced into it by the U.S. government. They weren't happy. I was making a little money. They caught on to it, and they bullied me into making an LLC. And so I had to start this business. And then from there, it just kind of kept taking off. So I was like, you know what? Maybe it won't be so bad. Selling spiders for a living instead of having a real job. So here we are a few years later. I don't love the name Hardcore Arachnids, but I was under a lot of pressure to start the LLC quickly, and I had to think of something. So,
I mean, is it it being a business now? Is it
Yeah.
sort of what you expected it to be?
Um,
What's a typical week look like as far as it being a full-time job and stuff?
I didn't think you could do this full time. I never thought in a million years that, and you could sell spiders for a living. And I'm not saying everyone should go quit their job and do this because it's not for everybody either. There's definitely, it's got its hurdles, but yeah, this isn't what I expected I'd be doing, but here I am. It's cool though. I'm having a good time with it.
Yeah, we're in a really currently current times and stuff. At least maybe post COVID and whatnot. It seems like I know more people now, whether it's herps or inverts, like doing it full time than I did, however many years ago. So it's awesome that it's the industry is big enough to be able to support that kind of thing, and
Right.
It's in the realm of possibilities for people as long as they're smart about it. And
Yeah. I mean, I'm a lifer. I'm not leaving the hobby, whether this business works out or not. I'm staying. Like I've been doing this my whole life. It's what I love. So, I'm here to stay.
So I'm kind of curious. So with your personal collection and the animals you have, like for inventory and everything, how many would you say you have total? And then like, how much time do you devote to them weekly, would you say?
I'm always working on them. It would be almost impossible to put a number on how many hours there are. It's, from when I wake up to when I go to bed, I'm doing spider stuff. I'm not complaining about that. That's what I like to do. So it's really hard to put a number on how many hours a week I work on it. And now with the business, processing orders and printing FedEx labels and building boxes and doing all that stuff.
Answering questions.
Yeah, full time. It's more than a full-time job. Like, feeding spiders. Every night I'm sitting down here feeding spiders. I put the TV on and for hours I feed spiders. And when I finish feeding them all, I start over. Because the ones that, I finished feeding last week need to be fed again. So
by the time you're done with one side of the room, you're
Pretty
circled
much.
back to the beginning. Yeah.
Right. So
And then kind of question to go off of, just like being now that you're a dealer, what kind of trends have you noticed, like when it comes to popularity? I know that jokes aside, like jumping spiders were really big, and I know that you post about being hit up like about them all the time and stuff. Has that fad kind of like, I don't want to call it a fad because they're still like popular in groups. Like I know my friends who
has the wave crested.
Yeah. And like, and if so, it's like, what else are you seeing gaining popularity, be it tarantula species or true spider or scorpion?
So the jumper people, I give them a hard time and rag on them all the time. I love them though. They know I'm joking with them. But the jumping spider thing completely exploded. I mean, I cannot believe how many jumping spider businesses there are now just for people who just sell jumping spiders. how many people ask me for them, how many jumping spiders I've sold. I blame Tarantula Cat for a lot of that because of her videos that she made about the jumping spiders. I think that really set uh, a desire for people to keep these spiders. You know, she made cute little videos, and the jumping spider thing completely took off. Velvet spiders go hand in hand now with the jumping spiders. That's like the new thing that's coming up, and people are, you know, going crazy. People have been going crazy for the velvet spiders too. It just seems like a lot of people that keep jumpers also want velvet spiders. I guess because they have the cute little faces or
Right.
whatever. I don't know, you know. So those two have definitely been a trend for a while now, and I don't see it stopping. It's like got a mind of its own, you know. So
Are you getting new species of velvet spiders and jumping spiders in, or is it just
uh,
kind of like what we've
yeah,
had for a while that's circulating?
I see the jumping spider people working with other species. I mostly just sell Regis. That makes like the best pet jumping spider. Velvet spiders, I have 8 species right now. I probably have the biggest selection of velvet spiders than any dealer. So the new species are starting to come in with them. The difference with the velvet spiders is they're always captive bred or at least captive hatched when they come in.
Mm-hmm.
So they're tiny babies, which turns a lot of people off when they see how small the babies are. You know, because a lot of people that are buying these jumpers and Eurysis spiders, they're kind of new to the hobby and they're intimidated by the little baby Eurysis, but people are still getting them and raising them, and you know, it's becoming more popular. Not a lot of breeding with Eurysis happening in the U.S. just because the nature of the males maturing and dying way before the females do.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in years to come, you're going to start seeing Eurysis being bred quite often here in the U.S.
Do the females? Do the young commit like matrophagy at all? I'm blanking on if it's the velvet spiders or a different group.
Yeah, some of the Stegodiphys do that. I
Okay.
don't know if Eurysis do that, but Stegodiphys are like the African velvet spiders that they started coming in recently, and they're coming in as wild caught adults. So you do see people breeding them now because they didn't have to raise out females and then raise up more males for the females. So you see people breeding them now, and I'm pretty sure that the Stegodiphys do that. Do that.
Okay.
So,
Hmm.
so,
And as far as tarantulas go, I mean, have you noticed sort of the trends there? Because I know like Celedonia sort of kind of the hot ticket thing at the moment.
yeah, Celedonia is still very popular. Any kind of blue tarantula, that's been a phase for 20, 30 years. Like, you know, if it's got blue, it sells. Um, you know, with tarantula collectors, they're always looking for the next exciting thing. What's new is exciting, and you know, and then you always have the classic spiders that are always going to be popular, like Grammostola pulchra, Brazilian blacks, are probably my most popular species that I sell.
Really?
Yeah, and then you know, as far as what's popular and trendy right now, Poecilotheria, people are always going to want. You know, they're harder to get these days because they're CITES, so you need CITES permits to import them. The Sri Lankan species you can't import anymore at all because they're ESA protected. And
What's your favorite out of that genus?
probably be, I don't want to be like a typical Metallica person, but Metallica is such a beautiful spider, and that or Miranda probably my 2 favorite.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, they're both great. They're all great spiders. The whole genus is beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that Metallica I have out of all the other Poecilotheria I've kept over the years, like that Metallica is, I won't say the most outgoing necessarily, but like compared to the Regalis I've had and stuff, like that Metallica is always out and about. Like if I walk in the room, it's not ducking away and hiding; it's just hanging out. Like it's just very bold.
Yeah, I would say out of most of the ones that I have back here, they're usually the only ones that are out. Sometimes when the lights are on still, which is nice because they're so beautiful.
Yeah.
Do you what do you call it? I'm blanking on it. Do you have any of the older like Metallicos right now? The ones I guess when the females turn like black in coloration or dark in coloration.
They all eventually turn black. I don't know if I have any of the older ones right now, but that was a big thing when they first kind of came to the market and people started getting old ones, and it was like the black morph. Like everyone had to have the black morph, not realizing that they were just the bigger, older ones.
Yeah, I remember like people were like
Yeah.
scalping others like with that, and like saw some obnoxious prices
Yeah.
going around there. I'm like, so this may be a hot take, but I prefer like the older females, the ones that are like black in coloration, over the
Yeah.
blue ones, because as much as blue is captivating to me, there's more species that are blue out there,
Yeah.
like Zanessa species
I was
blue.
gonna say there is like multiple.
There's got to be 20 or 30 blue species out there now. It's not like a novelty anymore.
Yeah,
Right.
but that really like we're right as they're starting to fade like to black, where there's
Yeah.
still a little bit of blue, but like
Yeah.
majority black. That looks really cool to me. Looks
Yeah.
pretty badass.
Yeah. I've seen some of the older ones. They turn almost like a silver color, which is kind of cool. It's like the faded gray, black kind of color. But
Nice.
I get this just look like almost like spray paint on concrete kind of like
Yeah.
effect to them. I don't know how to describe it, but
yeah.
I think the older ones that do sort of black out like that, I like the look of those just as much as the the traditional blue
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah.
But I mean, people that have been listening 9 episodes so far, like Bacillotharia, that's my jam. Like,
Yeah.
it's to me what Formictopus and all that stuff is to Sarg there.
Pamphobedius too.
Same, all that.
Yeah. I know you love the Penthos.
Yeah, as much as like Warren and everybody gives me shit for that, I still find them interesting.
No, they're cool spiders, man. They're
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. I remember when he posted that vegan Pamphobedius photo and everything. I was able to trick so many people into thinking like, yeah, join Team Pamphobedius. We have vegan tarantulas, and they saw your photo. They're like, they're really consuming a tomato. I'm like, yeah. 5 minutes later, I'm just kidding. Don't do that.
I'm convinced that you can get one to eat a tomato if you tease it enough. Like I kind of throw it in there to see if what it would do to it, and it put its fangs on it, and it walked away from it. But I bet you, if I kept teasing it, that Pamphobedus would have ate that tomato. He's not going to know the difference between that and a pinky mouse or something.
If what's your so I saw that. So just out of my own curiosity, out of the Pamphobedius species that you've kept, do you have a favorite?
Ultramarinus is I think, really cool. Pamphobedus solaris, can't beat that. Big red, beautiful Pampho. Those are probably my two favorite. The typical pretty ones. So
Solid choices.
I think Pamphobedus, though, I feel like needs to be broken up into different
100%.
genre.
Yeah.
There's 2 or 3 genres there that we're all calling Pamphobedus.
Yeah.
I think with time you're going to see them broken up. Like the spiderlings look different, and adults kind of group together of certain species. So
Yeah, I've been preaching that like so much. I know like some people are tired of hearing me talk about that, but yeah, there's in my opinion, there's at least bare minimum like 4 that could be broken up. I know there's the Antinous complex, but within that, some species like Arania pollito, they have an extra larval stage on there, and then you have the Colombian ones with the Nigu color Affinis 1 and Affinis 2, as well as that whole other Insignis kind of complex. And then obviously the Ecuadorian ones, and then there's I don't know if you're in the group Pamphobedius pictures.
I don't know.
There's a lot more coming in into Germany and everything, and the slings look completely different. I know when I was out in Ecuador, I found what someone called a Pamphobedius, and it resembled more like a Formictopus sling, but with the white metatarsus.
Oh wow!
On there, and they were like, "That's a Pamphobedius." And like I found like a bunch of the slings. Someone else went down there and found like an adult, and it had like clearly kind of like carapace markings, looking like a Pamphobedius. But it's just like there just needs to be more work done to see like, we can't just group into whatever has those carapace markings as a Pamphobedius. But yeah, I'm waiting on someone to revise that. I know Taylor Caledonia, he was saying that it's been in the works for years, but I don't think there's any traction or there's any progress being made right now.
Yeah, I haven't heard of anybody working on it. If Tyler knows, then I take his word for it, but I'm not sure. I haven't heard of any updates or anything. Not that I would have access to that, but it's a tough group to work on, I'd imagine, because
it's
a lot of spiders and a lot of big area.
Yeah.
Well, I'd imagine some of those populations too get fairly sort of separated and pooled in certain areas too, and
Right.
isolated. But yeah, it seems like a mess. I'm not super hip to a lot of the Pamphobedia stuff like Nisarg is, but seeing it's like it's reminiscent to me of like all the Central American boas at one point that were all just one thing,
Right.
sort of differentiated by locality, and then finally someone came in and was like, nope, these are all different things.
Right.
But I've never been into the bigger species of spiders and stuff, but I got that Apophysis a couple months ago, and that's a fun little spider, man.
Well, it's gonna get big.
That thing's a blast, man.
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying that one.
Yeah, they're cool.
So I'm kind of curious too, like about how dealers do this in general too. Do you keep the inventory and your personal collection kind of separate, or do you kind of like merge it? Like, oh, like I'm getting these also like for myself because I'm interested in them, or is it more like I'm getting these because like these are like popular, or these may do well, or do you just have interest in everything?
I tend to buy what interests me. If you look
Okay.
at my my website, it tends to lean toward New World terrestrial a lot. I just, if I'm into it, I could sell it better, and I appreciate it more than if they don't sell. I keep
Right.
them. So you know, so yeah, I tend to lean to my inventory tends to lean of what I appreciate and what what I'm into. That not to say that, of course, I'm always going to have popular stuff that people ask for too. But yeah, I like keeping what I like, and
Yeah.
What was that thing we were talking about the other day, Sarg, about pulchra and it being
Oh, Kuro guy. Yeah, so there's so it was it's been coming up like every so often ever since the whole Brazil ban took place. Like, oh, do I have a Pulchra or do I have a Kuro guy? And it comes down to it. I'm like, for all intents and purposes, they're the same spider to the normal hobbyist and everything. You
yeah,
can't really differentiate them unless you have like a mature male and you're looking at it under a microscope, which how many hobbyists are going to be doing that in general. But yeah, I'm kind of curious. Have you gotten like emails and questions about that? About someone
yeah.
being adamant like I
So
want a crow guy or I want a pulchra.
most people don't even know what Kurogai is yet, but the reality is, I think just about everything that's ever been in the hobby has always been Kurogai. But everyone knows it as Pulchra, so I still call it Pulchra on my website, and
Mhm.
it's probably going to stay like that for now. So I see a few more dealers now are starting to call him Kurogai. Some people are going to get tricked into thinking it's two different spiders, and they're going to end up buying the same spider. But I think the reality is they're all coming out of Uruguay, where they're all Kurogai, and they haven't been Pulchra in maybe forever.
were they always separate taxonomically?
I believe so. I'm not sure how old Kurogai
Okay.
is as far as the species goes, but I think they've always taxonomically been separate
Separate.
species. Just
Yeah.
what we've had in the hobby has been called Pulchra, even though they were coming out of Uruguay.
Mm-hmm.
So whether the hobby shifts to start calling them Kurogai now, maybe, but I don't want to mislead people and say, "Oh, these are Pulchra and they're Kurogai," but that's how the hobby knows it, and they've
Right.
known it
Yeah,
for 30 years.
yeah.
So
Kind of a trade name at this point.
It's
yeah,
gonna get tiring trying to like talk to everyone about that. Everybody who buys a pulchra
right,
or something's will be like, oh, it's actually crow guy, but like I don't know.
yeah,
I find that a lot more so in the tarantula hobby than the reptile hobby that people aren't really super focused on the science side of things all the time. There's more
mhm,
hobbyists out there that are
yeah,
just like just want a big black spider,
right.
and they're not really.
Tell people whatever the answer is, they're right.
Yeah, you could.
Splitting hairs at that point.
Yeah.
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 So kind of also kind of curious too because you've won a lot of world's first trophies. What is like one breeding like more memorable to like do you have most memorable breeding moment for like for a species that you bred or are you what's been your favorite, or what's been the most eventful, or like the most difficult, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I've bred a lot of like first U.S. species, like you said. One that always sticks out in my head was Chitheracanthus cyaneus. It's a purple Cuban tarantula, they call it. It's got the purple fangs, and um, another dealer at the time had bought them from under me, and this person was going to breed them or whatever. So I quickly imported some and quietly raised them up as quick as I could and bred them before they did. And I was always so happy about that. I kind of like set the market price on them, and so that one always makes me laugh. But there's a lot of cool stuff that I had access. I was very lucky with Frank Soma and my friend Tommy Augusta that were importing species early on, like new species that were coming into the U.S. And I was friends with those guys, so they'd get an import and I'd show up at their house with all my money, and I'd have access to all these new spiders. So I got my hands on stuff early in the game when a lot of new species were coming into the U.S. So I was fortunate to have that experience. As far as like what did I breed that I'm the most proud of, probably like Theraphosa species and some of those big South American giants that people just don't breed them in the U.S. and they're complicated. The females love to eat the egg sacs, and But I never bred Apophysis, but I've bred Blondi and Sturmai. But I'm gonna get that Apophysis one day, I'm telling you.
Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say how difficult. Like, was there a percentage of those newer species as far as figuring out sort of the quote unquote formula in terms of like being successful with them? Like, were there some that were just incredibly difficult and took multiple tries to kind of figure out, be it breeding or just keeping and being successful with them?
I mean, there's some species that I don't think will ever breed in captivity. Like, you'll always see Megaphobema mesomeles pop up. Like every 5 years, they get imported mass numbers of them that are probably from wild caught females. And I know one or two guys have bred them over in Europe. I'm not saying they're 100% impossible to breed, but these slings are mostly coming from wild caught females. They come into the U.S. and the next generation of hobbyists are here, and they think they're going to be the ones that are going to breed this spider. Even though for 20 years these spiders been imported, no one can breed them. They're still rare. Why are they rare? They've been imported 1,000 times. Because the adults don't do super well in captivity. And again, I know people have raised them and had them. People get upset.
It's the Boellen's pythons of the
right.
spider world, basically.
Okay, yeah. So and then there's other spiders that it's a brand new species you know nothing about. You just put the male and female with the female, and it's just very routine, and you'll easily get an egg sac. It really just depends on the species, So.
What's been your most difficult breeding, or like is there one that you tried X amount of times and it took you like so many times to get it?
So Monoscentropus balfouri, which is one of the easiest tarantulas to breed in captivity. I had the first breeding pair. I spent a fortune on these spiders. Like this is when they were like $400 a sling. I got my hands on the first ones. I raised them up. I'm like, I'm gonna breed these before anybody. And I had the first male and female pair. I was showing them off on arachnoboards, and I never got an egg sac from that breeding. Fast forward 20 years later, I still have not bred that spider. I don't know what it is. I just, every time I've bred them, it has not worked out. And I see these people have been in the hobby for 3 months pumping out babies. And I'm like, it just wasn't in the cards for me. Like, so maybe one day, but.
On those in particular, sort of something we're usually pretty curious to ask people that we have on. Like, what are your thoughts on the communal aspect of those and some of the Bacillotharia?
So I have a huge communal of balfouri down here. I think they do great as a communal. I did have one eat one though, so it's not perfect with them. And because you'll always read, oh, that's the only true communal, and it's like, well, I did have one eat one, so I do think they do great communally for the most part, though. I have raised so many Poecilotheria communally, and you'll keep hearing, oh, they're gonna kill each other. It's horrible, and you know what you're doing, and you're taking such a risk. I would say if you raise Poecilotheria together and you feed them a lot and you keep them in tight quarters like everyone says to do, it is a great way to raise them. They raise super quickly. There's just as minimal cannibalism as I have with my balfouri. The difference is the adults should be separated. Once they get about 3 or 4 inches, then you should start separating. And I'm not even saying I had a mass killing of Poecilotheria at 3 inches started killing each other, but they tend to do better. I've raised Poecilotheria females to adult females living together, of almost the whole genre I'm talking about. I've raised them all communally, with the exception of Ornata. They said that one was problematic, so I always avoided that one. But I've raised almost the entire genre from breeding them and keeping them communally to about 3 or 4 inches, and they do just fine. I think it's a great way to raise them. When you have hundreds and thousands of slings to take care of, it's a lot easier to open up one container and dump in the crickets than sitting there opening one container at a time. So when I was really pumping out a lot of Poecilotheria at the time, it was very beneficial to keep them communally for me. But I know there's always going to be the haters out there that say, "Oh, you can't raise them communally." You can't. I'm like, well, I did it.
Yeah, I mean, I see both sides of it. Like, I can understand why, but also given sort of the state of Facebook groups, and especially in the snake world and stuff, the people that are giving advice in the groups are usually the worst ones. The last people that should be giving advice are the ones piping up the most.
I've definitely found that, especially with tarantulas, more so than like reptiles, is because they're so easy to acquire that it's like, oh, I could just buy like 30 of this one, and yes, like they all molt in my care, so I know what I'm doing, and I'm gonna like tell everyone how to like how to raise that, or I'm just gonna like watch someone on YouTube and just regurgitate their information like that, when that's not always the case. And also one other thing that I've noticed a lot more, surprisingly, with tarantulas than, or just as much with tarantulas as with reptiles, is like the anthropomorphization. Words are hard today. Of tarantulas themselves too. I personally, I don't subscribe to that. That's not my thing. I like to see things through in a more scientific lens, but I feel like, especially like newer waves of keepers, are more like leaning towards like doing that. That's fine and everything, but I do like to kind of stress like there's a difference between like keeping them correctly, keeping them like than keeping them like what you think they would like, oh, I put a ping pong ball in their enclosure for enrichment and stuff like that. That's where I kind of like, all right, well, you don't need to be giving that kind of advice, like where it needs to have like something like that. But I digress.
I've had like I've tried all the communal species that people say you can keep communal, and like Neoholotheli, NCI. I had horrible luck at keeping them communally, but I've had friends that have did it very successfully too. So like, it might just be the whatever they were doing was working, or their spiders were better at it than mine were. I don't know.
Have you done it with Heterotheli?
I have, and I had horrible luck with them too.
Really?
Yeah, and because that's the other one that you always hear about,
Yeah.
So. But then I had a colony of Hysterocrates laticeps that the babies hatched, and I was just lazy to take them out. And I had them living with the mom for like 4 years. I had like 3-inch like babies, like they're still feeding with the mom too. The mom would catch a big hornworm or something, and these 3-inch juveniles would come up and feed from the mom with the mom. And that was accidental. I never really meant to keep a Hysterocrates communal. And I did for years.
Does it make you wonder how many species are more communal than we initially thought? Like, is it one of those cases of people brought in some of this one species at one point, 30 years ago, they had one incident or two incidents of like really, really bad experiences in having stuff together, and then they just wrote it off as like, oh, they're not.
I think some spiders there might be some more social aspects of some species that we're not aware of yet, but I think people get carried away with it too, and they want everything living together because what's cooler than a big tank filled with 100 spiders? So I don't think everything should be kept communally, but
Oh, that actually reminded me. Do you remember Alex Fisher?
Yeah.
Yeah, he had a communal laticeps going too.
Yeah.
I think he had like 2 generations.
Yeah.
And everything, and they were fine. And he's like, some of them moved off and created their own kind of burrow. Some shared it. Some fed communally. Some didn't. I know when I was talking to him, I believe he said he didn't keep track of like the mortality rate if there was one or whatever, but it was going well for him. And I actually got some slings from that from one of his pairings. I didn't put them together, but he also sent me some Balfouri from his communal. I asked him to send me like. Just because I was kind of curious, because I always read that like, oh, they do better communally, like when they're slings, when they're feeding at least.
Yeah.
So I had a group of 3 or 4 together, and 2 by themselves. The ones that were kept in a group ate better, grew faster than the other two and everything. And that's still, I mean, like, I know it's something that you always read about and everything, but it's like, nah, I'm gonna do this myself. I'm like I want to see it now. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
I do want to see. Have you ever kept Pamphobetes Araña Pollito?
No, just because they're so well, I've kept them, but never kept them communally. Just they're so pricey that I don't know anybody who's got the balls to throw them together.
Yeah, I know that. I know back like what this had to be like almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
John 3800 on YouTube.
Uh,
Have you heard of him or like have you
yeah,
seen his
of course
stuff?
I remember. Yeah.
He got a female Araña Pollito from someone in Canada who had kept a few of them communally,
I
and
think
they
I
said they had
remember.
great luck.
Yeah.
But that's way back then.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any proof of it.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I have been down to Peru in the area where they're like from, and their burrows were very close together.
yeah.
There seemed to be like multiple life stages coming out of the same burrow.
Wow, that's cool.
Stuff like that. I can't say that was fact 100% as
Yeah.
I wasn't there a long time. I didn't get to like observe them at any
Yeah.
for any like great length of time,
Uh-huh.
but it kind of seemed like that.
Right.
But yeah, I share the sentiments with you. I'd love to do that, but they're still like what 350 a sling
Yeah.
and everything, and it's just like, yeah,
If you
no.
can even
So,
find them, they're not easy to find either. So
yeah, and like I know most people think that they're like, oh, just like another like Antinous
yeah.
or
Well,
whatever,
it
but
looks they look similar.
yeah, yeah, I don't know. It would be cool if we could lock down as a hobby in the United States, like a way to
Yeah.
figure out or to get better with like breeding stuff
Yeah.
like them, as well as Zenesthus and everything, so we could become a
Yeah.
little bit more self-sufficient.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
with
We
that.
definitely need that. We definitely need that in the U.S. because prices of them are so expensive. They're getting harder and harder to import into
Mhm.
the U.S. these days, and you know,
And there's less and less people working them in Germany. I know Weber kind of like stepped back
yeah.
from breeding, and he was like one of the main like powerhouses for Pamphobedius. Uh, I hope Alex comes back into the hobby. He
Yeah.
had success breeding Zanessa species blue.
Yeah.
Uh,
He was pumping out all kinds of stuff, man. And
yeah,
he just
so I'm really hoping once he's done with his schooling
yeah.
and he gets everything situated, he comes back in because like he had a breeding group of Solaris and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know like he had it like intermediate and everything. I'm like, this man's gonna do it.
Yeah. I tried with species blue a few times, man, but I got a few egg sacs and it just never worked out.
Yeah, there's talks similar to like Ultramarines. I'm not sure if you heard of this,
Yeah.
but there's been a couple collection events of each. But the thing is,
Yeah.
the collectors haven't conversed with each other about where exactly they're getting them from.
So different localities or whatever.
Yeah, so it could be different localities. I know someone told me with the Ultramarines that if you look at the different individuals from like the different collections, their like mask pattern
Yeah.
looks a bit different
Yeah.
from each. And the reason why, like early on, a lot of people didn't have successes, they were trying to breed two different ones
Yeah.
together. Same thing with species blue, because if you go over into like South Korea, they're amazing with their localities, keeping track of everything.
Right. Right.
You have like Omnigiri,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
and a couple of I saw like a light blue or
Mhm.
something, and they're like tracking all the lineages, similar to how like a lot of like snake people do from when they're
Yeah.
importing, and they're having great success with them. So that just makes you wonder. I'm
Yeah.
like, what do we have exactly?
Yeah. I definitely think there's some of that going on in the US that they're mixed up locales, and that could have been the problem with when I was breeding species blue. But I had an egg sac twice, and both times the female ate it.
Uh,
I don't know if have you ever seen a grown ass man crying over a spider before? Why?
yeah, I don't know. That would be a kick in the balls. I'm like, I don't
Yeah.
know if I could recover from that.
Yeah. Yeah. But
What do you
it
think
breaks
the reason she was doing that was for, though?
that she ate it.
Yeah.
My guess is always that when they eat a sac, they know something's wrong with it or it's infertile.
Mm-hmm.
They sense that there's mold or something growing in there, so they just say, "Let's eat this thing and get some nutrients back from it." It's not to say that some females haven't eaten sacs that are good. I mean, that definitely happens too. But I think a majority of the time when a female eats an egg sac, those eggs are probably bad in there anyways.
Yeah.
And from the little bit that I was able to save, those eggs weren't developed. They looked pretty rotten.
I think I also remember reading like basically that on like someone posted on Arachno boards saying
Yeah.
that also just like even if it's like let's say out of like 100 eggs, if like 20 eggs start going bad,
Yeah.
the chemoreceptors they could pick up on that, they could consume that,
Yeah.
regardless if those other 80 eggs were still good
Yeah.
and everything, and she needed the nutrients or the sustenance and everything, she'd
Yeah.
rather just eat them. And
Yeah.
yeah, no, that
Captivity is just not natural too. So,
yeah.
it's a South American spider. I'm trying to breed it in Long Island down here.
So what so one of our so one of our listener Hans, we
Yeah.
we kind of mentioned it before. He
Yeah.
he did have a question regarding, especially when it comes to like breeding
Yeah.
Sparacidae or keep on. I don't really know how to pronounce this.
Yeah.
Tinaday.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Teenage or teenage. Yeah.
what's your method when it comes to breeding those? Do you just kind of like throw them both in like or introduce the male into the female's enclosure
Yeah.
and just keep them cohab for a little bit and then separate them,
Yeah.
or how does that?
Yeah. Just like a tarantula, I always put the male into the female's cage. For the most part, they'll breed right away. I only leave the males in if they're not mating or doing anything after multiple attempts. Then I'll leave them in overnight. But most Baracidae and stuff usually go at it right away. And mating's always the easy part. Getting them to lay egg sacs and stuff could be a little bit more trickier, but true spiders tend to be fairly easy to breed, though, for the most part. Raising the babies is another story. The babies are super tiny, super fast, super fragile. They need to eat very often. It's not like a baby tarantula where, once a week, once every other week is
Mhm.
okay for a baby tarantula. These little Sparacidae that grow super fast, they need to eat 2 or 3 times a week or they're going to burn out.
Mhm.
What are you feeding them? Springtails?
I mostly use Melanogaster fruit flies for the
Okay.
hatchlings, so
That would be such a pain.
yeah. I don't know like what jumping spider people do. Like I just had some jumping spiders hatch here and I dumped Melanogasters in and they're scared of them. They're running away from them. So I guess they use springtails when they hatched, but usually baby huntsmen are big enough to handle a fruit fly,
Mhm.
a small fruit fly. So
And then do you see any because like I'm never like I don't think I've like looked into like breeding Sparacidae or Tinaday or
yeah,
anything. Do
yeah.
you see a lot of like aggression from the female towards the male? Do you see a lot of like cannibalism from there?
Occasionally, usually when I leave them in overnight, I'm not supervising them, so I don't know what happens. But for the most part, they get away. But you do see some cannibalism with them. You'll see the female jump the male. So
Is that
Heck,
with like Heteropoda too? Like have you seen that with them?
yeah, yeah, same with them. Yeah. But they're usually pretty good about not eating each other. But it happens.
do you have any sort of leeway as far as cohabbing pairs of true spiders like that? Like if you leave one overnight or for like an extra day or so, or is it one of those things where it's like you usually need to get him out as soon as you know they're done?
No, they usually take off so quick when they're done that they're on opposite ends of the cage. But the only time I ever leave them unsupervised is if I tried to breed them 3 or 4 times and nothing happened with me supervising them. Then
Okay.
eventually I just leave the male in.
Mhm.
Sometimes in the middle of the night you hear them bouncing off the walls and something happened.
The something I've been curious about too, because I've been really interested in some of the Aphonopelma barica. On your reading on your website that you mentioned those maybe not being a Aphonopelma but being a different genus.
Yeah, I forgot the genus off the top of my head when I wrote it, but
Starts with an S. I don't remember it either.
yeah, that spider has had a complicated label its entire time it's been in the hobby. It's been in the hobby for 20, 30 years, and
Mm-hmm.
it was called Crinoriform for a while, which it's not, and then it went to Barica, which it's not, and I don't even think it's a Phonopelma. I forgot the name of the genus that I think it's in, but I think eventually it's going to be replaced, and it's not going to be a Phonopelma. A Phonopelma is another one too that needs a major overhaul. Like
Yeah.
what we know in the U.S. as a Phonopelma is not really a Phonopelma. That's going to change one day.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, because
real,
I was curious about that because
yeah,
seeing Simani
yeah,
as a Phonopelma and then seeing just how far apart those are from all the
yeah,
American stuff. really made me wonder if it's kind of like the devil scorpions we have here in South Carolina that are Vehovis.
Yeah.
And they're on the opposite coast of every other Vehovis.
Right.
It's like, how are those still the, a similar thing where it's like, how are Simani, like, which one's the original,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, with a Phonopelma, Simani is the type specimen. So that group will keep a Phonopelma, the name of Phonopelma. The ones in the U.S. eventually going to change to a different genus.
Is there something that already exists that you think they should be in? Or is it one of those things where they just get an entirely new genus?
I'm not sure if they're going to resurrect an old genus or start a new one. It's not my territory. You'd have to ask the Phonopelma guys, Chris Hamilton and Brent Hendrickson, the two guys working on that.
How cool are those Moderatum?
They're cool. I actually just got a mature male for the first time in my life. I never saw a male before. I don't know where it is.
I keep seeing pictures of those too. And I mean, what's the reasoning for those having the price tag on them they do? Is it just because they're...
Just the color and, it's one of the few Phonopelma from the U.S. that has some nice color to it. Most of the Phonopelma are brown. Again, no, all the Phonopelma people will be mad at me tomorrow, but it's the truth. Most of them are brown, the U.S. ones. But the male is really cool. Let me show you the male. It's black.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And it just molted out to be a male, or you somehow managed to track down a male?
I went to the pet store actually, and they had this sitting at their. I don't know how well you could see it on camera or not.
Yeah.
They just had it there, and I saw it matured today. And I was like, I'm taking that, man. I don't have pictures of a mature male yet, so take it home. Yep.
That's it's funny. Like when I was heavier into inverts, many years ago, the Phonopelma, Brachy's, all that stuff, sort of the more basic brown stuff really didn't do anything for me. It was all about like Bacillotheria, like Haplopelma, when it was all Haplopelma, like aggressive, sexy stuff is what I was into. Now that I'm getting older and I'm sort of coming back into things a bit, I'm more interested in the brown, like more basic stuff. Like I have a Simani that I love. Like that is an awesome little spider. And I really, really, really want to get my hands on some more of them because I'm just really enjoying that simple stuff. I had Vegans years ago, but I have a Vegans now. She's awesome.
Great spider.
I have an Albo, a PetSmart Albo, and that thing's a trip too. That's
it's a shame. Some of the cheaper basic stuff, it's a shame that people overlook them. And like, they're such great spiders. Like Vegans, they're so beautiful after a molt. They're like velvet looking spider with red hairs on them, and it's just how it is. People are always after the next big exciting thing, and kind of forget about the old stuff.
I still love the old world stuff, and the Bacillotheria especially, and whatnot. But I'm just like, I never kept a Phonopelma. I never really kept Brachy's. When I had Vegans, they were still Brachypelma. They weren't a little coddle or whatever they are now. And now, like, it's kind of flipped. I'm just like, I like the stuff that's minimal drama, minimal stress, and it's become kind of the same with snakes. Like, I still have my difficult stuff that requires more attention to detail and a little more effort.
Right.
But I've also come to like really enjoy the stuff that doesn't require any of that. That I can just, enjoy, which I still enjoy all of it, obviously, but like to have the stuff that I don't have to worry about, like stress about. It's really nice to have the balance of both of those things.
I do think you bring up a good point, because I'm always like wondering like what's going to be the next rosea, with shutting down imports and everything. What's going to be jumping up in price? I know, like, one thing that always like fascinated me, which I'll get into, I haven't really talked about it, was like, I love Pteronoclus, I love Marinus, I love the different quote unquote color forms, which
Goddess is always going to be my favorite out of all those.
Yeah, a nice Lugardi post molt is great. I do think the different color forms should be looked into more to be elevated into their own species. But just like, I want to have distinct pairs, or like not pairs, they're not like snakes, I guess groups of each kind of color form and everything, just to kind of like propagate on to continue on and everything. And same thing with the Phonopelma. I know that Drew Granado, I'm sure you know him.
Yeah.
He took me out to look for a Fauna Palma when I was down in Arizona,
Yeah.
and just seeing them in the wild just like brought a newfound passion for me.
Yeah.
But also like the locality nut, how I am with like my snakes is kind of like in me driving me crazy. Like, you know what? I'd love to collect the locality myself
Yeah.
and everything. See them in the wild, take some photos,
Yeah.
collect a pair or two if legal, and bring them back, raise them up, kind of like be able to identify them through there because I
Right.
know like there's like when it comes to Fauna Palma, especially if you're getting wild caught and they're not super well known like Calcodes
Mhm.
or Hensi or something, it could just be like a Marksy type
Yeah.
or something like that. So it'd be really cool just to have those like projects. Um, yeah, and I'm not even talking about like moderatum or bicolor atom. Those even more
Yeah.
like quote unquote flashier ones. The
Right.
dwarf species Iotis, they're great.
Yeah.
I love how angry the dwarf of Phonopalma seem to be
Yeah.
all the time.
Mhm.
It's I don't know. Those are all just great species.
Right. Yeah, it's cool stuff.
Do you? Speaking of that,
Yeah.
you went to Peru.
Yeah.
I think it was. I just remember seeing the video that Cat keeps on posting of Richard falling off the side.
Yeah, I went
Like a
viral. Poor Richard.
yeah. Was he okay after that?
He was pretty banged up. He was fine, but he was pretty banged up.
Uh,
He had some cuts on his back and his leg and stuff.
oof.
But, it was like the first day too, so I felt bad because
Damn.
yeah.
So, so if you can just give like a rundown about like what species you found over there. What was like the target? Like, what were you hoping to see? Did you see what you were hoping to see?
Yeah, so I've wanted to go on this Peru trip for years, man, and I just when I was working at my real job, I never had the vacation time to do it. So it just happened to work out perfect. Tyler Kirk from Spider Shop and Richard from Tarantula Collective were like, hey, we're taking this trip to Peru to see Josh down in Peru to go find these Haplotrema species. And I was like, I'm into it. I'm going. I'm like, I'm going. So I jumped on board on their trip, and we were up in the mountains of Cusco where these Haplotremus live, and there's such variety there. It's amazing. So we found probably about 15 different species. I think 2 or 3 genre altogether. But the Haplotremus were amazing. The diversity in them, and just half a mile down the road, you can find a different population that looks different. Like it's amazing, and there's such an abundance there. It was a great trip, man. They're starting to trickle into the hobby. I don't know how great they'll do for the hobby because of these, high montane species that are kept at a high altitude tend to not do so great. But
It's like an abdomegaphobiema.
the same thing, yeah. So we'll see how they do. But it was a great trip, man. We found so much cool stuff. It was highly recommend it, man. If anybody gets a chance, contact Josh down there from I forgot the name of his business, but I don't know. You can message me if you know. But he takes people on these trips, and you will not be disappointed. You'll see so many cool Haplotremous down there, and they're everywhere, man.
Nice.
Yeah.
I know that Josh reached out to me once way back when,
Yeah.
but I thought it was just because I was asking questions about like Peruvian
Yeah.
species and everything, and
Yeah.
I thought he was a scammer for a second, just because he's like, yeah, he's like, I'm
I
down
was
here in
trying to
Peru
get my
looking for
kidney.
this, and he's like, talk about like Haplotremus and everything, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
this is sus.
No.
But obviously, like actually, when I was working down in Peru too, uh, one of my coworkers knew who he was
Yeah.
over there because like the community is so tight knit
Yeah.
down there too. But did you only stick to the montane areas for the most part?
For the most part, yeah. We were up in the mountains the whole time. It's just we were talking about maybe going down into the jungle, Amazon area, but it was so far. Like we have limited time,
Yeah.
so we just stuck it in that area. And there's just so much to see
Mhm.
in that one area that you got plenty to see. But
Yeah, and I thought that was really cool, like
yeah,
how you guys focused on just on the montane
yeah,
stuff, just because, like, no offense, I mean, like, I love me a good Pamphobedeus,
yeah,
as you both know.
yeah,
But everybody tends to go to the tropics.
Yeah.
Not everyone like focuses on the montane thing, and
yeah.
it's kind of cool that you said like you found. How long were you there, and you found 15, almost 15 different species?
Yeah, we were there for 2 weeks, but the actual expedition was for about 10 days.
Okay, yeah, and that's like such a short time period. Whereas
Yeah,
I'm sure if you're down in the tropics, you wouldn't find that. Well, I mean,
yeah.
like they'd be there, but like it it
It's
wouldn't be like
hard.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's different there because they live under rocks, these Haplotremous, and like I've been to Costa Rica and Panama and stuff in the jungles, and like you said, there's so much vegetation and dense trees and leaves and things everywhere that it's harder to find stuff because it's
Yeah. There's so much going on.
There's so much going on. We're in this up in the top of a mountain. There's nothing. It's just rocks. So the spiders are under the rocks. They're not hard to find.
What was the biggest species you found, or because haplotermites for the most part are I've never kept them. They're normal. Are they considered dwarfs?
Well,
are they just like on the border of
They're
that?
borderlining that, right?
Yeah.
I'd say the biggest ones that we found were probably 4 to 5 inches or so.
Okay.
Maybe there was the one gold one was probably a good 5 inches or so. So much cool stuff though, man. And some of them have egg sacs or babies hatching. Like, it was so cool to see that in the wild, So
Yeah, I feel especially with you because you've hatched out so many egg sacs in captivity. Just being able to see that happen in the wild, it must have been like
it was totally cool.
unique. So you said you also went to Panama. Did you see any Sericopelma over there?
Yeah, typical red and black ones. Not really sure what they call them Bottomtons, but saw those and the Panama blonde, Stomolpius pulchra, or whatever it is, pulchra. I was with Frank Soma, so we were looking for true spiders and stuff there. We've a lot of Copianius species and stuff there. So yeah.
Is Salafes? I'm probably butchering that name. Are they found down in Panama?
Say it again.
Salei.
That's that gold and black one, like the orange.
Yeah.
One. Yeah, I think they're there, but we didn't see them because I would have been all over that.
Yeah, because I remember seeing them. So like, Frank probably knows me as the most annoying kid ever because I remember back when I was like 14.
Yeah.
I got like 20. I gathered like they kept getting $20 so like from one of my birthdays and everything. So I had $200, and like I messaged him. I'm like, these are what I want that you have, and then I left my computer open and my dad saw it and he's like, absolutely not. So I just saw to say like, hey, I can't buy these spiders, and I wasted so much of his time, and I feel so bad that I don't want to like reach out to him ever again.
No.
Because that was like so.
On a show. You want somebody who can talk? He'll talk, man. He loves to talk, so he can fill up 2 hours for you easily.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to tell Warren, like have like a New York spider mafia kind of episode with
cool.
him, Frank, just going on, just like shooting shit because you guys are like obviously have been in the hobby for a while and you guys are real bouncing off her because like Frank's always been more of a true spider kind of guy as far as I know. You have more of a mixed experience.
Yeah.
Warren probably just keeps tarantulas.
Yeah.
I don't know. He says he keeps tarantulas. I don't know.
Yeah, no,
for sure.
He still has them. So. Yeah. No, we have a riot when we hang out, man.
He's been trying to get me to come down to Long Island.
Yeah,
but
you should.
I was over there for a couple of weddings. And driving through there's brutal from Pennsylvania.
Nobody comes here on purpose.
I'm down south, so I'm just used to everyone leaving from up there to come down here.
Right.
We just get all the transplants.
Yeah.
I joke that South Carolina is just an annexed portion of Ohio at this point.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm kind of curious too. So I saw someone in one of the entomology groups mentioned that, and this was a topic in our ArachNerds group chat that something popped up, was in New York, because it is a hub and everything, like they were able to find a couple species of, I believe it was Heteropoda or another Sparacidae, like in like, I believe they said it was like a Dominican, well, it was a Dominican grocery store or something. Have you ever just kind of like when to start to be like, oh hey, if you find any spiders on like one of your fruit shipments, just give me a call.
Those old threads were like Hapalopus was showing up in bags of bananas and things years ago, and every time one of those threads would pop up, I'd be at the grocery store for like the next 6 months. You never get that lucky, and I doubt they would ever remember to contact me if they found it. But I have found Heteropoda venatoria in New York.
Oh yeah, there's a population now there. Yeah. That's pretty established, right?
Yeah, it's in the Bronx, and I think it's because of the Bronx Zoo and all the. I think they're breeding in the Jungle World building there or whatever. And in the summer, they're coming out of this building. I found them around there. So it's very weird to see a spider like that in New York, but they're
Yeah.
here. I actually caught one outside. You know?
I guess you could now breed and sell it as the Bronx locality.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what I was calling them. Heteropoda species Bronx.
Because their lifespans are pretty quick, and they're
Yeah.
how they keep on breeding and everything. So technically, they could be pretty far removed from their wild counterparts. Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
found in their
And
habitat.
Venatoria are pretty adaptable too. They're found all over the world. I think they
Mhm.
started, I don't know if they're native to Asia or Africa, but they're found everywhere at this point. Like it's one of the most widespread heteropoda species.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious on that. Just like how with how fast true spiders propagate and everything. Like,
Yeah.
what are the differences? Like, if you collect some from all over the world
Mhm.
and you kind of compare them to the type species,
Yeah.
what has changed? Have they have they
Yeah.
changed at all, or
Oh
like
yeah.
the coloration
Yeah.
or something like
Size.
that?
Definitely. I've had heteropoda venatoria from all over the world, different localities from everywhere, and there's definitely variation in them. They start turning into their own little, whether it's size or color variation, there's definitely differences in different pockets of venatoria. The one that I found in New York, the mature male was only like that big. It was small.
Oh, whoa,
Yeah. So
they're wow. I don't even.
yeah.
Because the females could get what, like
I've
5 inches?
I've seen some of the Asian ones like 5, 6 inches. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. Have you kept Maxima at all?
I've had Maxima, whether or not they're real or not. There's also the Thailand ones that were popular a few years ago. I still have now. That got about 8 inches or so. And then I had Heteropoda maxima from Laos, which is where they're native to.
Mhm.
And it looked like a Heteropoda maxima. It never got 12 inches like you read about, and it kind of maxed out at like 7 inches, maybe 8 inches or so. But true spiders also vary in size, and in captivity, sometimes they don't grow as big as they do. So whether or not this was real Maxima, I'll never know. But I had something from Laos called Maxima that looked like Maxima. It's interesting though with the true spiders. When me and Frank were finding Copionis in Panama, we were looking for like the red Gatazi form, and they were like 5 inches. And then we got some in captivity, and we raised them up and we bred them, and they were only like 3 inches. Now, whether the ones we had in
Hmm.
captivity were a different locale, or they're just not getting as big in captivity as they do in the wild, like who knows?
I'm sure there's a lot of variables
yeah.
there.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious too because, like, theoretically, at least with snakes, Justin, correct me if I'm wrong. In
Yeah.
captivity, you see it the opposite way. You see them reaching
Yes,
like their
absolutely.
maximums in captivity.
That's
But
why people think all carpet pythons get 9+ feet.
yeah, that's fair. But it's really kind of curious, and just to kind of follow up because you did make mention of like how you still keep some pairs and everything. Do you have like multiple generations of like any of the heteropoda or any of the, like those Sprassidae going? 'Cause Sprassidae,
Yeah.
even though I haven't kept them, they're some of my favorites, and I'd love to keep them one day. But I'm just kind of curious, or like, are they always like being imported all the time because we don't breed them in captivity? I mean,
No,
in the United States.
I've bred multiple species, 3 or 4 generations. I will say after that, whether it's the lack of interest in them or they tend to fizzle out with time, and you're going to need more. But like the heteropoda species Thailand, the big 8 inch ones, probably I'm like my fourth generation of them now. I'm raising up now, and so if you can keep them going. Just the I feel like eventually most of the true spiders do kind of fizzle out and
Mhm.
need new blood or new,
Yeah.
So
Do
it's
you
just
see any inbreeding depression from
not
them?
that I've ever noticed. It's a hard thing to prove,
Mhm.
You try not to inbreed them if you can, but the reality is we have such small gene pools that you're mixing stuff whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious too, because when you're talking about the size and documented size in the wild populations versus captivity,
Yeah.
something I'm always just thinking about and wondering about, at least with my smaller stuff, as far as tarantulas and scorpions go, is like,
Yeah.
we talk about the regular feeding schedules that people have of, once a
Uh,
week, twice a week, whatever. But like, I really think that these things are probably borderline grazing damn near
yeah.
daily, I would think. And so I wonder, like, have you changed the feeding schedule at all on those species you mentioned as far as them being smaller than what's been documented? Like, do you notice them would they get bigger if you fed them more often? And
I think they probably could get a little bit bigger if you fed them more often. I think some of that would play into it for sure. Can't say that I've changed up my routine too much. I mean, I do I feed when when I have time, and they get fed.
Because I mean, you think about the like avicularian stuff down in South America, where there's bugs freaking everywhere, especially if we're talking during the wet season. Like, I have a very hard time believing that those are just gonna, same with the apophysis or anything else. It's like if there's a food abundant and they're hungry enough, like they really just have to walk right out and grab whatever they want at any time. Like it's not going to be a pinhead a week kind of thing. Like I feel like they're going to be eaten pretty much constantly.
And they're getting a better variety out in the wild, as opposed to in captivity. They're getting a cricket that was fed a potato. Yeah, there's got to be some play. With most animals, a varied diet is better, and I believe that's true with spiders too. So out in the wild, they're nabbing a little bit of everything. It's beneficial to them.
What do you offer your stuff? Are you changing it up? You do a mix of stuff, or what's
I try. I predominantly do crickets. I know people hate crickets, but I don't like keeping roach colonies down here. They tend to attract forward flies, and that makes me crazy. So I buy a case of crickets, I feed it out, and there's no leftover, nothing, no crickets dying down here, nothing. So but roaches are great feeders too. I can't be bothered.
I had to stop keeping dubia, man, because I got sensitized to them like hardcore.
Really?
Yeah, I had at least 2 times where when I was cleaning them, I inhaled some of the dust and the frass.
Yeah.
And like I'm not allergic to anything, like pollen, but it's usually just like stuffy nose, that kind of stuff, like seasonal, whatever. This like straight up, I could my throat was closing. Like I had to go and sit down and take some Benadryl because like it was literally getting hard to breathe. And
I heard of that. I didn't know it was that bad though.
It progressed. Like initially, like I would get kind of itchy if I had one crawling on my hand or something in that spot. Like, and then over time, it just got worse and worse. And then it happened again a couple years later. And at that point, my wife was like, "Just stop with these things." I was like, "Okay." So, but it's also weird too because, like on paper, I should be allergic to shrimp and shellfish,
right?
But I'm not. It's just strange, but maybe it's just the dust, the dust factor. But like, yeah, dude, man, there was one point where I was cleaning a big bin of them, and I just, for whatever reason, kicked up a bunch of dust and then inhaled, and like, it was rough, man.
I never liked the dubia anyways, because a lot of them tend to burrow as soon as they get into the dirt, and like with the crickets, they just wander around aimlessly until they get eaten.
I had a small dubia cohabbed with my I think my Metallica for a while.
Yeah, that's what you end up with.
They just live together. Yeah, dude. They just like, okay, I guess we're just not going to eat him. So we're just hanging out together.
So speaking of roaches, Pseudoglamorous magnifica. You posted photos of those. Do you still keep a colony?
So I was on those early on, man. They're such beautiful roaches. I was so into them, and they were doing amazing, and they were reproducing, and I was just getting to the point where I was getting a decent sized population where I felt like I should break up the population into smaller groups. And I don't know what happened, but one by one, like I divided the colony up into 3 colonies. One by one, they just started dying off, and I could not stop it, to the point where I lost them all. And I've been kind of turned off it to them ever since then. I don't know what happened. They would die, and a lot of them would get like moldy, or like maybe they had some kind of fungus or something. I'm just speculating. I really don't know, enough about roaches, but I had a very strong, healthy colony. And when I broke them up, at some point after I broke them up, they just started dying off one by one. It was just such a shame because they're beautiful roaches. So
yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, like it seemed like from the photos that you posted, like because from what I remember, it looked like it had multiple generations. On there, and I was thinking in my head, I'm like, why are they still $200 like a roach? And everything, and I'm just like, that's some like high-end feeder kind of thing. I'm like, that's something I gotta feed my Caledonia.
Yeah, and that was years ago that I had them, and they're still expensive. So they don't seem like they're breeding like dubia by any means, like so, because you think the price would have come down on them, but hopefully people start pumping them out. I don't know, maybe the roach people do have them. I'm not really in a roach loop these days, so
yeah, I dove. Well, this is a good segue because I actually kind of was curious what other kind of inverts you kind of keep. But like, I tried to get into the roach hobby with it. Like I kept like the different species of Halloween hissers.
Yeah,
I tried the. I originally got I believe they call them. I'm bad with roach scientific names, but the green
yeah,
banana roach. I
yeah. I
try
don't
to
know.
get them as feeders just because their wing they make more of a ruckus when you throw them in an enclosure.
Yeah,
But I keeping larger terrestrial species. I'm going to need to put like 5 or 6 of these things
yeah.
inside an enclosure. I just didn't want to waste that time
Right,
doing
right.
that. But do you keep any other like roach species or any other invert species outside
Yeah.
of? I saw you had millipedes. You had that
Yeah,
giant African millipede.
yeah. That thing's a monster. I got it right here. Actually, it's this thing is giant.
Walking around his room like a dachshund.
Might as well be the size. Holy
It
crap!
is. It's 13 inches long. I measured it. That is a massive millipede, man. But
That's
yeah, I keep these guys. I don't keep any roaches anymore these days, but I do keep some centipedes. You know, a lot of the centipedes are wild caught though, and like there's not a lot of people breeding them. There are some people breeding them, so
they're
if I
quite
don't have
difficult,
the
right?
time.
And a
Yeah,
lot of Scolopendra commit macrophagy too, right?
yeah, yeah. I think a lot of people just don't know how to sex them, and people drown them to sex them and do all these weird
Oh.
things. This thing is mega though. That's a big
That's
millipede.
cool.
Right.
Do you have a mate for that one?
It's a female. She's been in with a bunch of males, so
Ooh.
I've seen them attempting to mate with her, whether or not they got it in or not. But let's see if my hands are yellow now. It doesn't look like it.
Oh, did
So
he
wait, do
secrete
those
something?
pop out
Yeah.
live babies or those lay eggs?
They lay eggs in
I
a
know
soil.
nothing about
Yeah.
millipedes.
Yeah. Um, my main interest is spiders, and
Okay.
tarantulas and spiders. So like scorpions, I never got into scorpions, and um, I've vinegarones and stuff, but same thing. They're all wild caught, so it's not really of a lot of interest. I like things that breed in captivity and that you can make more of. And um, my main interest is always going. My art and passion is always going to be the spiders. So
Do you have like a holy grail species that you want that's in the hobby already, but that you just haven't had the opportunity to acquire?
I've had everything that's in the hobby, but there's this tarantula. I don't know if you ever saw it from Australia. They call it the rattlesnake tarantula.
Yeah, I thought it was a Phlogius crassipes.
No, that's because
Oh,
they call them whistling spiders.
oh, okay.
It's. I don't think it's a described species. It's from Australia. It's called a rattlesnake tarantula, and when you upset it, it sounds like a rattlesnake. And it's the
Hmm.
most bizarre thing, but they're rare in Australia collection, so never mind here. And
Yeah.
they're really not exporting anything out of Australia anymore, so I don't doubt we'll ever see them. But I would love to like just mess with one of those spiders and take pictures of it, and it's not very colorful. It's from Australia. Australia, nothing in Australia has a lot of color as far as tarantulas go, but it's a cool spider. And I don't know, I've always been. And then the Sterocrates elephantitis, or whatever it is. It's got
Oh yeah, I
those
saw.
big Popeye arms in the front. That'd be a cool spider to have, man.
Oh, you should look up. And this is not me plugging Pamphobedius because I love Pamphobedius, but
Yeah,
also
Yeah.
Pamphobedius, Pamphobedius crassifemur. It literally just means huge femur.
yeah,
And
yeah,
they're like, have you seen photos of it?
yeah. Isn't it like leg three has the big femur though, or something?
I think it's
Or
all the
both of them?
femurs.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Like each of their legs. It just looks
Yeah. I know the
amazing.
name.
I know they were like one time again. This is because they used to pick up any black Pamphobedius and import them as Antinous and
Right.
everything. I think at one time they someone imported like a mature female, just one of them, and
Uh-huh.
everything. And I'm just like, that would have been so freaking cool. Granted,
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have gambled on paying that much for a wild caught
Yeah.
one of one female and
Yeah.
everything. But yeah. Quick question. Have you kept reversal Palma?
I'm sorry, you cut out. What was that?
Oh, have you kept reversal Palma?
So I've only seen one of those once in person in my entire life, and I had to go to Canada to see it.
Oh,
Martin Gamesh from Tarantulas Canada. I was up
mhm.
there hanging out for the weekend, and he had one. And I'm so pissed I didn't take pictures of it because I never saw one ever again. I know they were in the U.S. hobby a long time ago, but I don't remember that. And just they haven't been around at all. Like it's a cool spider though.
Do you know if they've been like bred or not? Because I see them. I don't know if they're just being more and more wild caught. Because in South
Yeah,
Korea, on like Keeper's Instagram page, I'm seeing them
yeah,
over there. Like
that's
I remember
interesting.
seeing a price of
Yeah,
them once, and it was an absorbent amount of money.
Yeah. Well, I'm
But
surprised they're even over there. But if anyone bred them in captivity, it was probably 20, 30 years ago. You know?
okay, got it.
So I mean, maybe I like I said, I have heard they were more common in the hobby, like even before I started. So, but there wasn't a lot of captive breeding back then either. So
Yeah, that kind of got me wondering. I'm like, are they just very
yeah,
difficult to breed,
yeah,
or what? But they kind of reminded me of a Fun Palma species Diamondback,
yeah,
like with the two-tone kind of thing.
yeah.
Um, but I don't know if Reversal Palma is just like as slow growing as a Fun
Fun
Palma.
time. Yeah.
Yeah,
Who knows?
yeah.
Like I don't even know how big the babies are when they start. Like I don't know anything about them. So
It'd be cool to get them in, but then again, I feel like most of the hobby would just look at them like, oh, it's a brown spider and
yeah,
everything. So
yeah,
Not sexy enough. It's not neon colored, just like in snakes. If it's not neon colored,
yeah.
people won't want it.
I'm always being one of those people that's always looking for the hot new thing. I'm always looking for a new genus.
Mhm.
Something that like might be a little different or act a little different or shaped a little different. Like so that's
yeah,
why
I
I
think
buy a lot of like when things come in just Theraphosinae species, Coco Boco or whatever. I'm like usually all over that stuff because I just want to see what it is, raise it up, like.
what's that one that's fuck, I forget the species. You posted about it. Like, oh, this is what your $400 orange sling turns into, or whatever. What species
Yeah,
was that?
Theraphosinae species Machina, which is from
Okay,
Peru. And I think now they're Europelma species, but they're still undescribed from what I know. But the babies are like neon, smoking, screaming orange, beautiful. But they turn into like a brown spider that isn't really the most beautiful spider at all.
yeah, the
But
abdomen shape's a bit different than the other
yeah,
trans,
it has
right?
like a balloon shaped abdomen, which is kind of unique and it's cool. I actually just had an egg sac, but unfortunately it went bad. It would have been the
Uh,
first egg sac. Would have been another first egg sac in the U.S., but
are they a big species? They're quite small, right?
yeah, only about 4 inches. Yeah,
4 inches. Are they
yeah.
high elevation?
Probably. Actually, when I talked to Josh, he said that I think they're lowland like jungle. But we found Europelma up in the highlands too. So
Any as colorful as that one?
no, no.
Okay,
Most of the Europelma that we saw were there was one like little yellowish one, but it wasn't like super exciting.
got it.
Yeah.
Do you do much in the way of breeding, um, like African stuff?
I breed whatever I have a male of. So there's not like really a certain group that I'm trying to focus on.
Hmm.
I've bred a ton of Ceratogyros before and Harprectera and stuff like that. And there's a lot of new African spiders in the hobby too, like Caffreyana and Namaquensis.
Yeah.
They're not new to the hobby, but there's still not a lot of people working with them.
Yeah,
You
they're
know?
beautiful though.
Yeah, super cool spiders.
Um, I was just looking up the name of this one species, and I'm not sure
Yeah,
if it's in the hobby, but it's
yeah,
the one Colombian species that has a new type. Well, not new. It's been a year. It's been like 4 or 5 years.
yeah,
Has a different kind of urticating hair. Can
yeah,
Como Marquesi.
yeah. I don't know how to pronounce it either, but I've had them, and they got to about 3 inches, and I lost them all. And yeah,
Ah,
they have that new type of urticating hair, and the babies are really cool looking. They almost look like Patches de Palma, almost or like Ira de Palma.
yeah, I
They
remember
have this
seeing that.
weird, like like almost a boreal pattern looking to them. But I think when they get bigger, they just turn into more of a black spider with some red hairs on the abdomen.
Yeah, I
But
think they look like a generic. Yeah,
yeah,
they look like a generic like red rump,
yeah, yeah.
that kind of
But
thing.
it's cool how they change from the colors of a baby to an adult.
Hmm.
So, but they're in the hobby. I had them, like I said, I got them to about 3 inches, and then they just started dying off on me. So, so I don't know how many more are still around these days, but they've been here.
Yeah, they look kind of. I always wonder how many people fall for like, oh, this sling is this color. It's always going to stay this color,
Yeah,
sort of thing. I know when T. Caledonia first entered the hobby, I know some people were
yeah,
like skeptical and everything, like,
yeah,
oh, it's probably going to mature out into a brown spider, but no, it didn't. It's
yeah. Well,
and
the Europeans would do that to us all the time. They would introduce a new species like Diva Math or Psychedelicus, as
yeah,
it's called at the
Hmm.
time, and they only show us pictures of a juvenile, like these smoking rainbow, really beautiful colors, and like you find out later on they just kind of turn like dark bluish black, and like or what's that other one, the one from Borneo by
oh,
Rupees.
Peru, yeah,
Yeah, the same thing. They only showed pictures of the juvenile when they were coming from Europe, which is like electric blue color, you know. And the same thing, the adults just brown out, black out, whatever, you know. So
Or didn't they also do that with Ornithoctone species Vietnam silver? Like
yeah,
how they came in, they were so expensive,
yeah,
and then people are able to get them breed just like that, and
yeah,
the price dropped. And someone made a meme.
very
They're like,
quickly.
imagine paying $400 for this, and then like 2 years later, they're like going for like $60
Yeah.
or
Well,
something.
the guys that were collecting them too, I think, saw dollar signs, and they just started exporting tons of babies, probably from wild caught females, and that's why the price of those dropped pretty quick too. You know? So,
Those those stayed that silver color with gold fringes, right? For the
yeah.
most part.
Yeah,
Okay.
from what I've seen, I have some here, but they're not adults yet. But from what I've seen, the adults are smoking beautiful. You know?
Yeah. It's all, but they're fossorial, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the only downside.
yeah.
All that beauty
My
from
buddy was trying to get me to buy an Oreo tibialis that he had at his
Yeah.
table recently. It's tempting.
I
I always
love
say
those.
that with fossorial species, I say that of a psychedelicus all the time. I'm like, yeah, it's gorgeous, but who cares when it's 3 feet under the dirt 99.9% of the time?
I say the same thing about Caledonia. I'm like, first of all, I need a magnifying glass to see it.
Yeah,
Second of all, if kept properly, you're not gonna see it at all.
yeah. I had my stint with Caledonia, and I bred them, and I moved on from them. It wasn't really the most interesting spider for me to keep. You know, like you say,
Yeah.
their bark, the trapdoor most of the time. It's a beautiful spider. Don't get me wrong. And I was excited about them when they first came to the hobby because it was such a unique behavior having that arboreal trapdoor lifestyle
Mm-hmm.
that like no tarantula in captivity ever had before. Like, so I had to keep it. But at the end of the day, it's just a trapdoor spider that hides under a trapdoor all day
Yeah.
with really pretty colors.
Is Coste, I believe that's how you pronounce it, is that in the hobby?
Yeah, it's in the hobby.
Or like in the US hobby? Because I know it's in Europe and
Yeah, no,
everything.
it's
And
been
there's
in the
one other
US.
species.
Is that
I've
the one we were
seen,
looking at yesterday
I'm not sure.
that I had posted in the group? Because someone over in Europe had posted them having them for sale.
Let me check right now.
I don't remember. I don't know. I think the stuff outside of Caledonia looked really cool. I
yeah,
mean, Caledonia do too, but it was just nice to see that there's other things in that genus that are
Yeah.
really as awesome.
Yeah. That's
There's,
the one you posted.
I've seen four species of Typhlochilina in the US now. So
Yeah, I've seen I don't know which ones are in the US, but I saw like overseas there was like a number of them.
yeah,
And there's some are undescribed.
yeah.
But yeah, and then there's a boreal one. What's his name? I'm horrible with people's names, and I really want to give him credit. Because it's a cool species. Thorsten,
Mhm.
Kroos.
Yeah.
Um, I forgot what country he's from, but he was over in
Dominican
yeah, and there was a new species of Antolina and
yeah. Yeah.
everything.
I think they found a few new species of that now, or they recently described another one or two of them, and then they just found those guys just found another one or another two. So that's
Yeah, that's
interesting.
really cool.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like I don't think many people would admire them just because they're not colorful.
Yeah.
They're not like an avicularia,
Yeah.
but they're pretty cool. I
Yeah.
remember when Julian Campillo,
Yeah.
he had a real hard on for avicularia, and I
Yeah.
used to give him shit so much for it. But like I know his dream was the requesti.
Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't seen those around at all anymore. Are they still kicking?
They've always been hard to find in captivity. They've been in the US a bunch of times, but never in big numbers. And I don't know, those avicularia type spiders like to die, man. So I don't think there's many around today. If there are, if there's probably a handful of them around, if they're still here.
Yeah. It's I mean, like, as much as I give shit to those species and everything,
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's always kind of like sad, disheartening seeing like a species that's so coveted, or just like you like it's been in the hobby for years and
Yeah.
still hasn't like taken off for one
Yeah.
reason or another.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand sometimes breeding is difficult, but at the same time, it's like if you put just as much effort into this one species that you do
Right.
the other, I'm sure you'd be able to like knock it down.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've come to find with snakes in particular, like there's like 4 different stages something has to hit to become like massively popular, and if it's not sort of like at least 3 of those 4 things, it just doesn't really take off. And that being like ease of care, ease of breeding, like getting babies going, and then overall sort of temperament.
Ball pythons.
And I mean, like rhino rat snakes are a good example. You know, like those are the complete package, except that 4th part of getting babies going. Like it takes time and it takes some effort. Like if they ate pinkies right out the gate, those things would be everywhere and they'd be cheap and everyone would have them because they don't lay big clutches. But to me, like in terms of like a display animal that's always out, they do it. In terms of handling them, temperament, like they're probably some of the chillest snakes I've ever had. Like once they're eating and stuff, they're absolute monsters. It's just getting those babies going that kind of holds them back.
Right.
I feel like I'm sure it's the same with plenty of invert species too, where it's like if they're not hitting, 3 of those 4 things, if not all 4, then they just don't. Availability too, being a part of that.
Yeah,
that was a big hurdle for rhinos for a long time, was just the availability wasn't there. There was nothing difficult about them. Same with rough scale pythons. Like there's nothing tough about keeping them. Like they're not difficult at all. It's just no one had them. So they're, it's availability.
I do find that kind of like one of like the point that you made about like them feeding and everything, that kind of interesting, because I remember back when Formictopus cease, I'm not going to try pronouncing that name, the one that feeds on snails and everything. That one came, like a lot of people were like, oh, they would buy them and everything. They're like, oh, there's a snail eater. I'm like, oh, did you feed a snail? I was like, nah, I just feed crickets.
It's just cool knowing they could do it.
Yeah. I'm assuming you've kept the species. Have you ever tried feeding them like snails or anything?
No.
Yeah,
I mean, you always hear nightmares about snails.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So I don't know if it would even be a thing, transferring a parasite or something to a tarantula, but I don't know. Where am I going to get a snail from, anyways?
Yeah. This is that's a good segue, because you do a lot of importing parasites. What have you? I know like people have posted like photos of like abdomens are rupturing with flies, botflies looking things.
Yeah, I've had
as well
that.
as just like mites and everything. What are some things that you've come across?
So I've had everything, and I'm actually writing an article on it now for the BTS magazine. I've had every kind of parasite and fly and maggot or whatever you could think of, man, from the good to the worst. And I will say the bot flies are pretty cool. They're not that common, but when you come home and your tarantula has a maggot sitting next to it, and
xenomorph.
Yeah, the spider unfortunately dies, but it's kind of cool seeing Mother Nature take its course. And I've actually raised these flies to adulthood, and a lot of people at first will think they're a wasp, because you always hear about the tarantula hawk wasp, but they tend to be a fly. It's a bot type of a small-headed Arcadia fly. It's the fly is it's like a small flightless fly that lays eggs around a tarantula burrows, and the maggots somehow get into the tarantula through their book rungs or whatever, and they eventually pop out. I've had mites, whether they were good mites or bad mites. The most devastating are nematodes. I could probably do a whole show on nematodes for you guys one day if you want. I've had the horsehair worms popping out of true spiders, things like that, which those are pretty gnarly too. But I don't know. I get excited about parasites sometimes, as long as it's not nematodes. But,
well, what's the as far as how do you know that something has nematodes? Like, what's the symptoms there?
Most typically, the spider will hold its palps underneath its fangs. That's the first sign. You can see a spider. After a while, you just get good at spotting them. You can see it from across the room. If they're holding their palps underneath like this, you should check your spider for nematodes. And they get a white, gunky mouth.
Okay. I think I've seen pictures of that.
Yeah, it looks like white slime. But a lot of times people will post picture of like an avicularia that has white gook in its mouth, and it's poop.
Yeah,
because
it's just like eating shit.
Well, what happens with a lot of arboreal spiders, they drink water after you spray this cage. They'll drink and they'll come out, and they also spray poop on the sides of the walls. So they're smearing their mouth around on the water and the poop, and they got white stuff in their mouth. So a lot of people mistake that. A nematode spider just doesn't act right. They're kind of off balance a little bit, and they're not eating, and if you see white goopy stuff in your mouth, you should be concerned. If you actually look at it with a magnifying glass, you'll actually see the worms moving in the mouth too. It's hard to see with your eye, but if you put some magnification on it, you'll see it moving around. Yeah.
Have you had any be able to like survive a nematode?
No, I've
Like,
tried I've tried various things to try to help them, and some of them have cleared up the nematodes, but the spiders always ended up dying anyways. So whether or not there was damage on the inside or the treatment also was harmful to the spider, so the spider died. There's no good cure for nematodes, and that's something I'd like to see somebody work on and really find a cure for, because it's devastating when you get them. So
yeah, that's something that like, so one of my friends, she works out in Seattle as a vet.
mm,
Her
yeah,
clinic started getting a lot of tarantulas in.
yeah,
So someone in her clinic is like looking more into just like stuff like that at
yeah,
what they could do to help,
yeah,
which is interesting on my end. I'm very look from the scientific aspect, because
yeah,
we don't know much about like their circulatory system and
yeah,
everything. We know obviously they're very sensitive to most things, which is
yeah.
why we can't like give them medicine or whatever.
Hmm.
Right, that's the
So I'm
problem.
really kind of curious, like where they're going to put their funds to when it comes to researching,
Yeah,
or is it just going to be like a normal vet? Which I used to bash a lot of like people were like, "Oh, I took my trench to the vet." I'm like, "Great, you
mhm,
wasted $200 that
yeah,
you could have like told that you could have went to someone else." Because what are they going to do? I'll like put it under using CO2, like high
yeah,
thing, flip it over. What are they looking for?
yeah,
What are you hoping to get out of that?
yeah. So I used to bash those posts too, and then I started rethinking it, and I'm like, you know what? If people have an interest, if these younger vets have an interest in it and they want to learn, but like they got to start somewhere, and
Right.
Yeah,
so I don't really knock on those posts anymore. I still don't know what they can do for it, and
mhm.
that's the big problem is there's not a whole lot you can do with a tarantula, but I think there is a cure for nematodes out there. They just have to find
Mhm.
it. So
Yeah, I'm pretty curious, especially with all the
yeah,
information and technology we have on our hands right now,
right,
and I'm sure with how big like the invert hobby has become,
yeah,
we could like invest some kind of like money into that,
yeah.
and see what
There's
could come
been
from it.
there's been some studies. I've read a lot of papers on it. There's actually two species of nematodes that they identified that are the ones that live in tarantula's mouth. What's interesting too is when I had nematodes, only Theraphosid spiders got it in the family Theraphosidae.
Hmm.
No true spiders got it. No trapdoor spiders got it. No centipedes or millipedes or anything. Only the family Theraphosidae. That's it.
Hmm.
So they're very specific on what they target. But supposedly there's two species of nematodes that target um, Thyrophosidae tarantulas. So, you know, so they're,
That's really interesting.
yeah,
Do you so then like have you like started like quarantining some of
yeah,
your wild caught animals and everything? I
yeah,
know
well,
like in our last episode we talked with Brandon about it,
yeah,
about like how I know that it's a big thing with like in the reptile hobby. You want to
yeah,
quarantine whatever animals you get.
yeah,
Not many people I know when I was talking about it, like even like what 6 or 7 years back, I'm like, oh, you got
mhm,
this from Palma. It's very clearly wild caught.
yeah,
Maybe you should quarantine it. And they're like, no, we don't quarantine that.
yeah.
But yeah,
No,
I was hearing curious
de-
about what your take is and what you do to quarantine.
definitely with tarantulas. I don't worry so much about it with centipedes and scorpions and stuff like that, but tarantulas I definitely worry about. As soon as they come in, if they're wild caught, I'm checking them for the nematodes. I do quarantine them for a good month or so. As far as I know, the nematodes move quickly, so
Hmm.
you'll notice quickly if they have them. Um, I forgot where I was going with that, but I had a good point. But
what's your
um,
what's your favorite way to get rid of mites?
when they molt, get that
Oh,
spider
you
out
move that.
as quick as possible. I've had like predatory mites on not predatory mites, like harmful mites on tarantulas that they can live with them for. First of all, a lot of tarantulas have mites, and they probably have mites right now in your collection, and you never notice them.
Hmm.
And in small numbers, it's not a big deal, but you'd be surprised how many tarantulas in your collection right now have mites, that you just don't see because they hide in like the chestuaria, like in there,
Yeah, the little nooks
little
and
cracks
crannies
and
you can't even
crevices. Right.
see.
So if
Yeah.
there's small numbers of them, they're not a big deal. They can be a problem when they get to bigger numbers. I've tried the predatory mites, they're supposed to attack them and eat them. Some people swear that they're helpful. I never had good luck with them. I've tried like the Q-tip with the Vaseline to try to dab them off, but some of them attach so tight you can't get them off. So I always found when a spider molts, if you get to it right away and you take it out and put it in a fresh enclosure, which you have to do carefully if a spider just molted, that's the best way to get rid of them. But they tend to reappear with time anyways, because you're not going to get every one of them. And honestly, the mites are probably attracted to that fresh, soft, moist
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
body. So they're probably coming off of that skin and going to that new body as quickly as they can.
Yeah.
But in small numbers, mites I don't find are a big deal. Bot flies are a big deal. It's going to kill your spider. Horsehair worms are a big deal. It's going to kill your spider. There's no cure for that, and there's never going to be. So.
Have you found the bot flies to be more prevalent in any particular genus?
Not really. And I mean, I've seen about 5 of them in my collection over 30 years, so it's not in abundance.
Super common, right?
I've had a lot of wild caught spiders. I don't want to sound like I'm some poacher out here, but I mean, I've dealt with thousands of spiders, and a percentage of them are wild caught, and maybe 5 have had that bot fly thing in it. Which I get excited about it when I see it, because I get to take pictures of this cool, nature taking its course. Like I said, it's cool. I mean, it sucks if it's an expensive spider or any spider, but
Have you ever come across the because I know Theraphos are very well known. I'm not sure if it's just like secluded to or just like for Sturmy or but like the cysts that not
I'm curious about that too.
Like, have you seen that in Blondie or Apophysis, or how often have you seen that? Have you gotten wild caught individuals in?
Yeah, I mostly see it in Sternmi, but Sternmi tends to be the ones that are wild caught. So I don't know what it is, but it is. I wouldn't say it's common, but it's
not. I feel like it's not uncommon either.
It's not uncommon, really. Yeah. And it tends to be with the Theraphosa, so they get this like weird brown, like hard lumps sometimes, or sometimes they just get a cyst that looks like almost like a pimple or that's gonna pop. They get weird abdomen problems, those spiders. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because they're so big and they drag them around,
Have you seen them like grow out or just like molt out of it, or in your experience is it always like fatal?
I've had them live years with it. I don't remember if I've ever had one get better from it, but I've definitely had some live years with it and molt with it, and depending on how bad the individual situation was. Some of them have it worse than others, so it depends on the individual spider. Really.
And is that something you see exclusively with wild caught stuff, or is it something you notice in captive animals too after a point?
I suppose it could happen in captive ones too, but I think it's mostly the wild caught ones that I see it on.
And then, so on that note, with my Apophysis and stuff, like with those growing as quick as they do, with your quicker growing species, not necessarily just Theraphosa, like, are you feeding them heavier when they're younger, or do you keep everything on more or less the same sort of?
I keep everything on the same schedule, pretty much. I look at the individual spider too. If I go to feed a spider and its abdomen is like a balloon, like I might not feed it that time, and then I'll skip it that time, or if the next one looks a little thinner, I'll give him a couple extra ones. So I go by the individual of how they look too when I feed them. So
because that Theraphosa is always hanging out right at the opening.
They'll always eat. That's the thing.
Oh yeah,
they're a little greedy with their food.
I think that's one thing. Like a lot of people, a lot of newer or people who anthropomorphize their tarantulas need to understand. Also with snakes too, it's just because I try to always like tell people like whenever they see that they're like, oh, like I feed it every day because it's hungry. I'm like, well, in the wild, they're opportunistic. They don't know when their next meal is coming. Right. So
and they tend to be skinny. The wild caught ones are skinny if you see them.
Yeah. And you could, and then that's why so and so has a Brachypelma vagans sling that's abdomen is 5 times the size of its carapace, right. And then oh no, it fell off its side of enclosure and it's ruptured. Well, I don't know. It's at least the reason why I like Theraphosa too is yes, if you accidentally overfeed it, they molt out pretty quickly, and everything. So it's not a big deal. Whereas a Phonopelma, it's all right, I gotta not feed this for the next 2 months, and then put on what was it? I was going to say whatever that diet was back in the day. That there
South
was
Beach.
yeah, or just give it a Zempic or something. But
I don't know. I just like with my younger stuff, kind of the same way. I take the same approach that I do with snakes. Is like when they're smaller and they're growing and their metabolism seems to be a little higher, I tend to feed a little heavier. And then once they get a little older and put on some size and clearly slow down, then it gets cut back a decent bit.
I did see a YouTube. It was this dude like 15 years ago. He was breeding apophysis. This was back when apophysis wasn't common in the hobby over here. There were still like hundreds of dollars for a sling. And he kept all his smaller slings in like a heated cabinet or like slightly above or like a bit above like room temp so we could get them out of the sling phase. I have heard of people like heating their slings or having a sling cabinet just to get them, just to like speed up their growth rate, because obviously higher temps, higher food, get them growing a little bit more. I know I did that when I first entered the hobby. I'm like, oh my God, my room temp, it got to 72.
Yeah.
These are tropical species. So I just like made it something, but after that, I just kind of was like, well, I'm like, you know what? If you grow, you grow. I mean, you're going to grow at the pace you grow.
Yeah, they're fine. I have my spiderlings are in actually a snake rack that has the heat behind it. Works out good. It's like a drawer system, so the little vials fit in the drawers, And I keep the heat a little bit warm just because it's cool down here. So, but it's not like, it's probably only about 70 degrees with the heat on it. So I don't keep them super warm because they do need to eat more. Then I just
yeah.
So how long do you spend on rehousing every week?
I usually I'll set a day aside for that and just because if I'm gonna get dirt all over the floor, it's gonna be like one day, and then clean it and then so
one and done.
What's your preferred? I know everybody either has their magic mix or they have something they're like, oh God, I swear by this. And I just saw someone recently post just straight vermiculite, and someone tried correcting him, and he's like, "I've been doing this for 40 years. This is fine." But
I invented vermiculite.
But what do you use for substrate? I assume maybe topsoil because it's cheap and economical.
Yeah, I actually use Miracle Grow brand peat moss.
Oh,
and
Miracle
people are always
Grow.
like,
I just like a word.
Well, they sell cheaper brands, like these big bales, but they're very dusty. And when you open it, you inhale it. You breathe out brown stuff for the next day. It's disgusting. So I like the Miracle Grow brand because it tends to come a little pre-moistened. It's not as dusty. But it has fertilizer balls in it, like these little tiny fertilizer balls. And people are always telling me, "Oh, that's going to kill your spiders. That's going to kill your spiders."
No, they're in there for enrichment. They play with them.
Well, I've been keeping them on Miracle Grow brand dirt for like 20 years, and they don't die on it. Fertilizer's fine. Insecticides are bad, So I actually saw one eating a fertilizer ball the other day. This little tiny. It had its fangs in it. It was eating it, and the spider's still alive. It's fine, So I use if I told people on the forums that I use Miracle Grow brand with fertilizer balls in it, they'd be like losing their minds. But
dude, it's the same way with pine and snakes. Like for decades, people are like, never use pine with snakes. And then you talk to these guys, and they're like, dude, I've been using pine for like 20 years.
What was it, Chris Montross?
Yeah, dude, and I started using it, and I'm like, I used it secretly for like 2 years just to see.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, let me try this out because, I tried it with a handful of snakes, no issues, and then I tried it with a few more, no issues. And I was like, these people are full of shit. This stuff's fine. These snakes don't care.
They're all just trying to hoard the pine to themselves.
But now, still, if you go into a snake group or something and be like, hey guys, I use pine, you're gonna get freaking crucified. All the beardy moms are gonna come out of the woodwork, especially in corn snake groups. Like, that's toxic, and I'm like, well, if that's the case, then my snake's been poisoned for 3 years because it's all it's been living on for 3 years.
Right.
I heard someone going off on another person for using cypress because they're like, it's a type of conifer. You shouldn't be using it.
God.
I'm just like, say that to the thousands of people that
use the best substrate for snakes.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
So how has the substrate has changed over the years, since you've been in the hobby? Obviously, the corn husk. Did you ever use just straight vermiculite?
No, I always hated vermiculite. I thought it looked horrible.
Sucks. It's
Yeah,
terrible.
I do like
You guys
having
don't like the asbestos?
I mean, I like the peat moss because it looks like dirt, like you'd
Mhm.
find out in the wild. Like I do like to have a nice visual appeal to it, you know. And vermiculite just to me looked like, I don't know, like some out of space
Glitter.
material. Yeah, like exactly. I will say there are some good commercial brand substrates out there that I don't have a problem with. A nice mix, most of the time you can make it on your own, but
Yeah.
um, I've seen the Bio Dude. He makes like this nice mix with like charcoal and bark chips, and it's probably
Mhm.
peat moss too mixed in there and stuff. So
Mhm.
some of the commercial ones aren't bad. They're expensive though,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's why I try to like tell people like when they're first getting into the
uh,
hobby and everything. I'm like, if you're just looking to have one or a few, then
yeah,
buying those premix ones,
yeah,
go for it.
right,
However, it's like once you get to like, because I don't know, transfers have always been like chips to me. Like every
yeah,
single time, like I get like I'm gonna get a manageable amount this time. By manageable, I'm like, you know what, I'll get a normal person amount, which is like 10.
right,
But then I just end up getting like 10 in
right,
every order
yeah, yeah,
and everything, and that just grows from there. Then
yeah,
just like obviously then like the biodude does get expensive
yeah.
for that. And
Yeah, the peat moss that I use is fairly cheap. I mean, these days it's a little bit more money because everything's more expensive these days, but
mm,
it's pretty affordable. So
I've been using the
never,
jungle soil stuff that I
yeah,
think Zoo Med makes. I don't know. I get it at PetSmart for.
yeah,
I don't.
that
I
stuff's
don't do a
fine.
ton of stuff. I like it, but if it gets, I've found that if it dries out, to get it
Yeah,
to rehydrate is a
yeah,
real pain in the ass, especially if
yeah,
it's already in the setup, like with slings or squirplings or something. Like
yeah,
if it dries out, it's almost hydrophobic.
yeah,
yeah,
it's like cocoa fiber.
Exactly. Well, I mean,
yeah,
I think that's the bulk of what that mix is, anyways. But like,
yeah.
I haven't used peat in so long. Do you have a similar thing with peat if it dries out?
It
Or
holds the moisture pretty well. When I open up a bag of it, I just run the faucet in it and get it mush it all around and get it real damp, and it holds it pretty well, and it holds the shape of a burrow nicely, and it holds the moisture well, and anything will dry out after time, but
yeah.
the peat moss, I love the peat moss, and I'm gonna keep using it.
Yeah, if the jungle soil stuff is damp, like it seems
Yeah,
to absorb no problem, and I'm assuming that's just the polarity of the molecules and
yeah,
stuff in the water. But if it's dry, trying
yeah,
to like if you hose it down, that water just sits on top and doesn't
yeah.
actually drain into it.
I used one of those jungle commercial mixes too, and it had some sand mixed in with it, and I felt
Yeah.
it was very heavy. And when you're stacking containers on top of each other, it was too heavy for me to work with. The peat moss is very lightweight too,
Hmm.
so if you're stacking containers on top of each other, it's not as you know wobbly and heavy, and
Yes.
Yeah.
containers aren't going down from the
Yeah.
weight.
Yeah.
I know my dad like recently, funny enough, it's like,
Yeah,
so like back in the day, I had, because like I needed him because I was taking up space in my dad's garage with the substrate. I
yeah,
had like a whole bag of peat moss that I kept inside like a 32-gallon uh,
mhm,
trash bin. And then I also had like a bag of topsoil and everything because I would go through these phases because I'm like, I'm cheap. I don't like how my one thing was similar as you said because I bought the brand that was in a green and white bag. You get it at Home Depot of peat moss and everything, but that was really dusty.
yeah. That's the
So
stuff that I've had. Yeah,
yeah, so that's what I hated. So then I'm like, okay, well, I spent like $10 on this like what 4 cubic foot
yeah,
bale. So I'm just gonna
barrel,
keep
right?
in this trash can, and
Yeah,
then I would get like a 40-pound bag of topsoil for like 292, and then be
yeah,
like, this is great, it's so cheap. Putting a Therafosa inside its like adult enclosure and everything. I'm like, all right,
yeah,
this is heavy and
yeah,
everything. So
yeah.
then like my dad's like, he's like, just so you know, he's like, after 10 years, I throw away all your, I throw away all your like all your dirt and
Weird
everything.
bales of dirt.
Yeah, and I'm just like, oh, I was just about to get back in the hobby.
Yeah,
I could have used those.
yeah,
You're a hoarder.
Yeah, and I also had like a big bag of vermiculite because I went through a phase where I'm just like, I need to mix vermiculite into everything for
mhm,
for moisture retention. And then I just got to be like, all right, and better for worse, I would not like I would do it indoors in my room
uh-huh,
and everything. I'm sure I huffed a bunch of it. Uh,
yeah,
but yeah, no. Now I feel like when I go back, I'm probably just gonna stick to like peat moss or something more economical like that.
yeah.
Something
I love
lightweight, especially because
mhm,
I do like large new work terrestrials.
yeah,
Um,
What?
They take up a lot of they
Get out of town.
they take up a lot of substrate, and I'm not going to be fond of just like moving around a bunch of topsoil. Like my biggest fear is like shelving unit falling,
Yeah.
just like all that soil going everywhere, smashing things around. I'm just like, no, I don't want to deal with that.
Yep.
Well, we are at after the 2-hour mark. Final question, and it also might be the most basic bitch question of the entire show. But because you've kept and bred so many species for so many years, if someone comes to you tomorrow and says, "What's the first spider I should get?" What's your pick?
I'm
Solaris.
definitely gonna go with Grammostola pulchra or Plotripes probably. I think they're great spiders. For somebody who's never had a spider before, you meaning like what could be better? You know, I think it's a great spider. They live forever, super docile. It's a great introductory species. Either one of those, you know, pulchra or Plotripes. I think Plotripes gets overlooked sometimes by pulchra, but they're great spiders. You know, don't go to Petco and buy a stupid avicularia. I'm sorry, but yeah, I think Grammostola in general, it's a great genus to start with. So you'll love it, and hopefully you'll be addicted and you'll start going on my website frequently.
I'm trying to get Justin on. The Classy is great, but Anthracena, I believe that's the one with the pink fringe around it. Trying to get Justin on that train because
hard to find, but they're around though. I've had them.
All the Grammostola, the group like Iringi, Actaeon,
they're all great.
Yeah, there's something for everything within Grammostola. You have the more calm ones like Pulchra. All the Roseas adults I've had hated me, despised my existence.
I was just saying, there's some spazzy rose hairs out there. Some of them are great to begin with, but I've seen some of them go fucking bonkers. You know?
Yeah, like I've had Formictopus. All my Formictopus were more chill than all my Roseas.
Yeah,
and but then there's also like, oh, you want amazing feeding responses? Iringi. I'm pronouncing that wrong. I don't know how to pronounce that. But yeah, no.
My Rosea is pretty chill, but I also think it's because she's a million years old.
Yeah.
I think physically she can't move fast enough to react to something.
Geriatric.
She's geriatric, I think, dude. She just has this old as hell aura about her.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, this was really good. We really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. It's definitely fun. So
we will eventually get around to a round 2, I'm sure.
Cool.
The New York Spider Mafia will be coming on.
Right.
That would be cool one day.
Right on.
Gangs in New York episode or something. The 5 points. This episode, as always, brought to you by FullVisApparel.com. Check it out. Facebook, Instagram. Use code THN at checkout. Get 15% off your order. That is the exclusive promo code for THN listeners and viewers like you. We will be back Monday night for Snakes and Stogies. We did not do it last week. Did we? No, we didn't do it this week. I can't do, my weeks are running together. I can't even remember. I don't think we did an episode this week. Phil had a family engagement or something. I don't remember. Either way, we are supposed to be back Monday. So we will see everybody there. Thank you.
All right. Very cool, guys. I appreciate it.
You guys. The chorus comes out.
See you guys later.
Love this.